The revivification of Cyberpunk was an arduous task that spanned nearly 3 years of bug fixes, additional features, and roughly $120 million, the bulk of which was spent to develop the Phantom Liberty DLC. It arguably took even longer for CDPR to rebuild the goodwill that they had accrued over the years and dashed away at the end of 2020. An optimistic person could look at this hard work and money expenditure as the developers promising to right their wrongs, to make their customers whole, to improve their dream project to a more perfected state. A more cynical person might look at this entire circus of development as yet another big studio taking advantage of their consumers initially and then fixing up a rough game instead of getting it right the first time. I believe the truth to be somewhere in the middle, as the developers have definitely continued to passionately defend their work and pump out updates, but the game has also sold over 35 million copies. Which, I mean, high-end? That's like $2.1 billion. But even at an average of half the full game price, that's a profit of well over $500 million. Cyberpunk's road to making things right crescendoed with Phantom Liberty at the end of September of 2023. By now, the base game was about as close to what the devs had envisioned from the beginning, minus a few missing features that had been scrapped after initially being talked up before the game's launch. And as such, the DLC was received with elation by many of the game's fans who had come around after the 2.0 update. I myself know next to nothing about Phantom Liberty going into it for the first time. The thing that I do know about it is that it turned the yellow into red. Whenever I look at it, I go, wow, that's red. That's all I know about it besides the review scores, so let's get to it. I will now look at the Phantom Liberty DLC with my eyes and ears and will commence telling you about whether I think it lives up to the hype, if it falls flat, what it does well, what it doesn't do well, all of the fun stuff that a video game essay encompasses. I don't know how to write script intros anymore. Oh, and I got a sponsor with Where Winds Meet that'll run right around the 40-minute mark. So try not to be too alarmed. Oh yeah, and my wife made a Cyberpunk Shivering Isles mashup kind of shirt if you're interested in that over on my merch shop. Alright, so couple of points of order. 1. Phantom Liberty typically kicks in during a vanilla playthrough right around the Voodoo Boys subplot in the main story. That's about halfway through the game where it makes sense for any side story elements to worm their way into V's life. It's just early enough for V to be interested in helping out without him worrying about dying. That said, the point of contact who kicks the DLC's events off comes on just strong enough to persuade V to comply.
I know who you are, know your situation, your problem, and I can save your life.
I want all my endgame equipment, and this is a good enough reason in my mind for V to break away from meeting with Hanako for the endgame ultimatum. Second point of order, I modded the visuals. I don't even know if you can tell if I'm gonna be honest. I didn't go nuts. I just wanted the game to look nicer, which honestly, a way bigger modding scene than I anticipated when looking through Nexus mods. It's pretty damn impressive. Either way, the contact known as Songbird wants V to meet her at an exceedingly rundown part of Night City known as Dogtown. Dogtown is a sub-district of the already beat-to-shit Pacifica where the MO seems to involve shooting first and asking questions later.
A crime has been reported.
Off to a fantastic start. Getting to the border has Songbird hacking into the relic in V's head, kicking out Johnny, and sparing CDPR from cutting another check to Keanu Reeves. It's okay, they'll pay somebody else instead. I don't think that's the real reason, but it was the first thing I thought of when I saw this. What Songbird has to tell you is that she's a netrunner who's working with the President of the new United States of America. And this is already kind of, I guess, difficult to take at face value, if you know what I mean. I know something relatively bombastic has to happen in order to pull V away from the vanilla game's questline, but you get hacked, Johnny gets phased out, and now you're following this person who might as well be saying, yes, my dad's the president of Nintendo. Like, sure, fine, it could be that that's what's actually happening, but it's so far out of left field that it almost immediately takes me out of any immersion. And I will say that being as far into the main story as I am does not help this feeling. Because at this stage, Johnny and V are as thick as thieves, two souls who understand each other on a fundamental level. And yet, V doesn't really seem to care that this random lady just threw Johnny out. Had we still been earlier on, I think I would have been more okay with this setup, and going in this late is 100% more deleterious to any engrossment of the story elements at play. But even setting that aside, you have a woman who goes, "Hey, so I can save your life, but you have to help me. Our plane is gonna crash in Dogtown," after being hacked by somebody who we assume is the Dogtown leader. He's likely going to take the president hostage. If you help us, we help you to live. It's all just so incredulous that I immediately go, nah, this is way too convenient to be remotely true. I'm not necessarily upset with the overall story beats being presented here, but it does feel a lot more fantastical than any other setup that we've gotten so far, and relies exclusively on V being the yes man that he historically has been in order to work out. If Songbird had hacked her way into V's head and demanded that he work for her at gunpoint more or less, that would have been the more realistic and immersive setup. She doesn't mention that she works for the president. She might offhandedly mention that she can save him if he does good, but the important thing is that she plays her cards closer to her chest while utilizing a more hostile and ruthless approach. Otherwise, this entire strand of story feels much more heavy-handed in service of trying to make Songbird a likable character that the player can connect to easily. I mean, it's pretty obvious that she's playing this sort of princess in peril role as she calmly explains to V what's happening to him in a nice tone while claiming that she intends to help save his life. And the same thing happens when I reload and pick the more perceptibly hostile choices, only to discover that they're roughly the same tone from V with exactly the same responses from Songbird. Like, there's no real option to tell her to fuck off and force her to coerce V into helping. He just goes, "Oh shit, the president? Huh, well I have heard of the president. Okay, lead the way." Regardless, Songbird imparts a little nugget of her power to V, clearing out corrupted junk data from the relic and uploading a bit of software that grants him a new minor skill tree to go down. And by minor, I mean exceedingly small, but still fun. The game mechanics involved with this has you manually collecting upgrade points to further push the limits of the software, giving you access to a mid-battle stealth ability, allowing you to view weak points on enemies, and granting upgrades to specific arm-related abilities. In my case, the gorilla arms got a boost that allows me to charge them up and unleash a shockwave from them, which I don't think I ever used, but good enough for me, thanks new Johnny lady. So we head through the back way and begin climbing through this beat-up garage area, which takes just long enough for Songbird to rattle off her backstory about how she was a 13-year-old orphan who got addicted to net running and was eventually picked up by the NUSA intelligence sector. It's fine, it's not an offensive stint of writing, but like, I don't care. I just met you.
Chin up. We're in this together.
There is that.
We've known her for probably about 10 minutes at an absolute maximum. She's either written to be the most likable and trustworthy character ever, or we're being set up for betrayal. And I don't like how overbearing either outcome is in terms of how this is written. On the plus side of things, Dogtown looks as fucking cool as one would hope. It just takes all of the grimy, rundown segments of Night City and condenses and enhances them into something incredibly harsh and enduring. When you look out into the trash pit that occupies this old stadium, that brownish muddy hue is what you expected when Dogtown was described to you. But the reality is that the stalls and stands that line the area are made up of the old colorful polymers and metals that were likely thrown out from Night City proper, creating this crazy blend of bright hues against the garbage-lined backdrop. It's the polar opposite of a lot of the luxurious, dark, and clean sights that you've seen out of Arasaka, and I really love looking around as I move to the next objective. So you head to this vantage point in order for Songbird to point out where the plane is going to crash, and it promptly does so, but you know, erratically. No idea why she wanted us up here, but it was a cool sequence at least. Songbird blips out of V's consciousness. V has to head down to the crash point on foot. Songbird eventually reestablishes contact, and V's like,
Songbird!
And now, landed safely.
Shit, Songbird! Thought you might have... Fuck!
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think the only way this immediate connection to Songbird is plausible and interesting is if she actually rewired V's emotional responses when she hacked in. Almost a would you kindly type of twist a la BioShock. Because this is just way too fast of an attachment to be good writing otherwise. You head to the wreckage to find the president, who seems like a tough woman stereotype, but she really isn't. I don't know what the fuck is going on, because we have this woman who Songbird describes as this cold, calculating leader, and she holds her own fine in a fight, sure, but as soon as we get to an area that's temporarily safe, she's like, oh my god, my people have died. There must be an insider who's working against me. I don't know how I'm gonna get through this. And of course, Via's like, whoa now, lady who I just met who's the president of the NUSA, you've got me and Songbird, and we're gonna get you through this together. At this point, even if this is a plot where these two are going to be revealed as manipulating V's goodwill, the lead up is just, man, it's not good. I did not see this coming at all. I will say at the very least that this rescue actually plays well into taking on the DLC in the late game, because I mean, V does just crush the shit out of enemies, making him a good candidate for rescuing the president. So I guess there's that going for it. You head further in, President Myers goes, ah shit, right, I have a tracker in my neck, and if somebody has betrayed me, I should remove it. Here, a random merc who I've barely heard of, cut my neck, right near my carotid artery, right? Just right there, right? Yep, just be very careful, because I don't want to die, but yeah, just go ahead and right there, random person who I've just fucking met. All right, we got to talk about this in more depth. One of the biggest reasons in a slew of reasons as to why Cyberpunk's main storyline worked as well as it did was that V was a yes man, but all of the stuff that he was saying yes to tended to align with his values and ambitions. And if they didn't, then Johnny would be there to either push V into doing something that he otherwise wouldn't do, or would be the voice of reason when V had none. Sometimes you would get a task that was more out there and relied exclusively on player curiosity rather than logic, like the one where you pay a bum for a spiked brain dance and wake up naked in an ice bath. And yeah, the entire reason that V would ever do that is if he was being controlled by an external force like the player. But the thing that helped to smooth that over was Johnny giving V shit for making such an outlandish decision. And it really pulls back the curtain on how mindless V is for the majority of the game. Because we're cutting into the president's neck, and there's not a single blip of, why do you trust me? Why did you recruit me? How can I trust you?
You're not dying on me today.
And let's be honest, I know we're at the start of this thing, but the objectives have been sneak into this place, climb this shit, power on the fuse box, climb this shit, power on the fuse box, sneak past these guys, rescue the president, power on the fuse box. Like, I think the third time I had to power on a fuse box for Songbird was the moment when I went, dude, what the fuck is going on with these objectives? Like, it would be one thing if they were cliche and uninspired ways to cause some other issue to arise, like the lights turn on the parking garage and enemies notice and invade, or you power on the elevator and Myers gets kidnapped right as we leave her unattended. But honestly, I think these objectives are here to give the player new DLC clothing, because it feels like every time I wander into some room that I'm directed to, it isn't because something interesting is going to happen, it's to loot a locker full of items. We fight our way down through the security force here known as the Barguest, a cute shout out to the Witcher's green glowing dog specters. And as we get to an old museum depicting the way that Dogtown was initially set up as an investment by the land's leadership, Songbird abruptly changes her tune about how she feels about Myers. It's a sharp shift from somebody who seems to care about the president, who seems to respect her ruthless cunning. Because now Songbird jabs at Myers' lack of responsibility in Dogtown's failure, and how her leadership inadvertently caused this while she doesn't take any of the blame for it. After making it through, more Barguests show up, and Songbird activates Metal Gear Rex to kill them all. Yeah, that's a joke, but this thing might as well get a 40-minute cutscene talking about nuclear weapons with how it behaves. Either way, Songbird loses control of it, we have to run away, and then we get this string of... they're not really even QuickTime events. They are, but you're pressing one button and get 3 seconds to do it each time. This whole DLC is bizarre. Like they brought in a whole different team to work on it. At least so far. If an indie studio had released this and all of the Cyberpunk shit had been rebranded, I'd be like, yeah, this isn't too bad. But we're stacking this against the base game and I'm having such a hard time with it. The boss fight itself isn't terrible, though it's definitely not meant for a melee build to take on. Can't complain too much overall though. At this point, Myers is actively looking out for V, which diminishes any idea that she could be a bad person. And I think that this has to be a me thing at this stage because I just wholesale do not trust any politician that makes it to Myers' level. I mean, maybe that's the next level 5D chess play here where she's actually, I don't know, some ruthless, cunning person, but she knows to play up the emotional stuff now when she's in danger. And Songbird was kind of driving at that idea earlier, which resonated with those feelings. But every display that we've gotten from Myers paints her as somebody who genuinely cares about what happens to this random mercenary. And the real issue I have is that V is sitting here and treating her and Songbird like they're both reincarnations of Jackie. It just feels like fiction in a bad way, you know? Like, sure, Myers could still stab us in the back and hit us with the, "It's just business, kid, I'm doing this for our nation." But we haven't even gotten a hint of that kind of vibe from her, and it feels like this entire plotline is just unabashedly flawed. Like, you could have had so many scenarios that involved you winding up working for the president, showcasing her ruthlessness and wit in a likable way that made you respect her even if you didn't personally like her. She doesn't feel like a cool character, she feels like, I don't know, just some random merc lady who you've been told is very powerful. I guess it'd be like if Rogue's introduction had her immediately walking out the door with you to go on a heist instead of her sizing you up and demanding money for intel like she did. I get that the scenario is different because Myers is in active danger, but I just feel like these guys came up with this entire idea and then refused to back away, alter it, or replan it even if the story would have benefited from some editing. At this stage, Songbird's absence causes Johnny to surprisingly blip back into the picture, and I'm expecting him to be like, "Man, what the fuck are we doing? Let's get out of this shit show." But he's just as concerned about Songbird's well-being as V is, and I cannot wrap my mind around why. This kind of thing is plausible had these three chatted before this, had a heart-to-heart, came to an understanding, but Songbird dumped Johnny off into a state that he describes as suffocating and all-around terrible. And he comes out the other side going, "Man, I hope this lady that just caused me to go through that isn't going through it also." God, what a strange way to suddenly write this game's story given everything that we've been through before this. I gotta think the primary writers were working on The Witcher 4 at this stage or something.
Listen, got a bad vibe about this. You? Songbird, S-tier netrunner, promises a panaceum, a cure-all, then gets wiped off the map. Myers, shady politico. Got a dagger thrown at her back all the way from Washington. Who by and why? Fuck if we know.
Finally, there it is. I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh on this entire intro and not giving it enough time to develop, but there are some weird inconsistencies going on that feel alien to the typically well-done writing. It's not like it's caused me to write this DLC off or expect it to not get better, but I'd be remiss to neglect pointing out this overall drop in quality. Regardless, I think we're finally at that turning point as V and Myers hole up in a location that was mentioned to them by Songbird earlier on. She's not there currently, which led to Johnny and V mulling over the idea that she could be, well, disingenuous to say the least. And after listening to the radio and hearing Dogtown's leader Kurt Hansen deflecting the blame for the president's rough landing, two scavenger types bust into our temporary abode. My guess is that you can choose to kill them, but I chose to hear them out. Their names are Jacob and Taylor, which, I mean, I guess those are pretty common names, yeah, but boy if my brain doesn't get flashbanged by Mass Effect every time I hear from them. After talking them down, they decide to join us temporarily, yielding some conversation from each about their overall lifestyle in Dogtown. The most interesting bit is that CDPR went, "Hey, how do we give a good lore reason for Battle Royale airdrops to be a thing in Dogtown?" And Jacob explains that the area is landlocked, so Hansen has these drops of supplies, weapons, and ammo flying in daily, which scavengers like these two risk their necks to steal out from under the Barghest squad. Wonder if these guys considered the idea of a Battle Royale type mode and reworked it into this DLC. I mean, the game was in development for nearly a decade, and was in the mid to late stages when Battle Royales really started to take off. It honestly would not shock me if they had a lot of the infrastructure in place before deciding to rework it. When morning comes, it's clear that something went awry with Songbird. Well, you know, beyond her going, "Oh god, Chimera, arg, losing control," earlier. At this point, Myers is worried about her, citing friendship between them as the basis for needing to find Songbird. Honestly, the deeper we get into this thing, the more that I like Myers. It was a rocky start with mixed signals, and it's still possible that she's a snake in president's clothing. But she does seem determined and level-headed for the most part, but also passionate and caring. She swears you in as an FIA agent, which is Cyberpunk's combination NSA and CIA. I'm at the NSA, I'm at the CIA, I'm at the combination NSA and CIA. I don't know why I wrote that down. Anyway, she hands you a token and tells you to go awaken a sleeper agent who's been lurking around Dogtown for the past 7 years. On the way out to find the guy, Johnny pops in and compliments V for rejecting the oath of the NUSA if you chose to do that, claiming that he wasn't as wise as V at his age. I'm so glad he's back in my head. Say what you will, Silverhand is a genuine boon to this game's intrigue. Stepping back out into Dogtown has the game allowing you to explore it freely as if it were any part of Night City, allowing you to bounce into and out of it at your leisure, which is nice. That said, there's all this talk about how there are no real rules beyond not fucking with Kurt Hansen's stuff or people. You know, the whole shoot first, ask questions later, take whatever you want, might makes right, kind of tough guy shit. But I narrowly sideswiped a pedestrian's leg, and the bar guests are immediately on me. So that kind of ruined that whole imagery for me right off the bat. You're telling me that I can't casually shatter somebody's pelvis for jaywalking in Dogtown? Heading to meet with the sleeper agent is a whole affair that instantaneously brings the intrigue in a way that I pined for from the start. Look, I know it's difficult to set up an entirely new story in the middle of an already overarching story. You can't always just go, "Hey Geralt, somebody who you know from the past needs help, so drop everything and come on over to this other country for a spell." And I think that that's probably the key to why things were written this way. You again have this mercenary who's actively dying and seeking a cure, and you need a way to pull him away from his current pursuits, luring him towards an alternate path. At the same time, you want to introduce 3 new characters who all have very strong personalities. That's going to be hard to get right, and I still think that the start of Phantom Liberty could have been much better. But it does feel like we're finally past the awkwardness with this introduction to Solomon Reed, who's played by Idris Elba. I mean, there's not much I'm going to be able to say that hasn't already been said 1,000 times before, but whereas Keanu Reeves has great presence as a consummate professional despite his inability to play anybody else beyond the same guy the majority of the time, Idris Elba is a stellar actor who captures an audience's attention instantaneously and has a huge range when compared to Keanu.
Don't turn around. Eyes on the court. Who sent you?
Rosalind.
I don't know any Rosalind. And neither do you. Were you followed? Did you even bother to check?
I did not, in fact, bother to check, and that's actually something that affects this bit of story in a minor way. V does mention to Johnny that he should lay low, but I thought that was banter and hopped into my Porsche, driving straight down the road to the meetup point. This causes Jacob and Taylor to die defending the president when Barghest thugs show up to our hideout, which was a really nice touch. We head up to Myers, who clearly has a history with Reed. Johnny sits on the sidelines and watches with morbid amusement, his warnings of not mingling with players at this level continuing to prove futile as we're already this deep into the NUSA's inner workings. And that is something important that's pointed out to the player immediately. My enjoyment of Myers' character and how caring she seems to be may all be a ruse adopted by her to get V to continue to do her bidding. That question being raised by Johnny does exactly what I was pining for earlier, taking one player's skepticism and lending it a voice while helping another player to begin to think about more than one potential outcome with all of this. The plan for now is to track down Songbird as you would expect. Reed seems none too pleased to be called on like this, but understands his duty and what's expected of him. Of course, getting the president out of Dogtown comes first, and that's going to take some time, leading us to a bit of side questing while we wait. This has us meeting with Paco, who gives us what I thought was going to be one of the best setups to a quest in the game. But the setup winds up being the quest, which I have mixed feelings on. One of the best parts about a focused DLC narrative is that if you're going to create some side quests, you don't need to worry about peppering the shit out of the map with quantity and instead can come up with a handful of quality stories to help flesh out this new part of the world. Paco's quest masterfully does the latter, but the payoff is definitely a mix of Night City's realism and a narrative flatline. Basically, Paco invites V into his tent for some drinks while he airs out his story. The drinks themselves have V reaching over his leg and tactically sniffing his balls, which is a choice, I suppose. Fits the song name for the quest at any rate. After some back and forth, Paco hands V some Deep Dive, a drug that helps to put the user in the mindset to feel as if they were actually there when somebody is imparting information. Which means that we get to witness a few flashbacks from the shoes of Kurt Hansen, playing as the Barghest leader as we go through Paco's initiation and first mission as part of the crew. In lieu of an extended cutscene showcasing Hansen's attitude, tendencies, and leadership qualities, we get to play as the boss man himself, who wields a killer pistol and a knife. It's fucking fun and really shows how a gang like this operates in a way that we only saw shades of in the base game. The crux of the story is told rather than shown, as Paco explains that Kurt's old war buddy intended to lift some generators out from under Kurt's nose, but Paco got to them first and sold them for his own profit. One thing led to another, and now it's looking like Paco's on a short path to death now that Hansen found out that his generators are missing. V suggests that we frame the war buddy and we're off to meet at a later time in a safer location. Waiting around results in the war buddy showing up to kill V, and the finale has V discovering Paco has been strung up and decapitated, his body displayed as a warning to the others. So yeah, on one hand your mind immediately starts thinking about how you might frame the other guy. What work is going to go into that, how this whole thing is going to play out. But the result is less heroic and more realistic, a grim depiction of life in Dogtown under an oppressive gang. One part of me respects that direction by the writers, and the other part sees it as a bit of a cop-out. What I thought was just the introduction winds up being the meat of the quest, and the information and ideas that it imparts are simultaneously lacking and intriguing. When Reed calls V again, he directs him to a bar to meet up with another deep undercover asset to the state. The only issue is that she was told that Reed betrayed the NUSA 7 years ago when an operation went awry. You're only picking up parts of this background at a time, but the way that it's told is organic and real when compared to characters here just spewing out their entire background stories at once. I kind of missed this complexity after Bloodlines 2. The long and short for now is that Reed and this new lady Alex worked under Myers before they went into hiding. Whatever they were doing at the time went sideways and Myers wound up pinning the blame on Reed, painting him as a traitor despite him taking 3 bullets for the president's cause. Kinda makes you rethink the whole thing about Myers being the nice guy in all of this, huh? My favorite part about this interaction and ensuing confrontation between Reed and Alex is her revealing her identity and V going, "Holy shit!" Like she transformed into the Green Goblin before his eyes. But like, her haircut changed, her eyebrows thinned, and her skin darkened a little bit. Either way, V chats her up and gets her on board after she claims that Reed, Alex, and Songbird were all part of a mission that went sideways and condemned her to the shithole that is Dogtown for 7 years. What she wants in exchange is to be granted retirement someplace nice, which V promises with no real way of knowing whether Myers will fulfill that promise. Johnny once again pops in to discuss the deeper intricacies of what he's been picking up on, continuing to paint the rocker as somebody wiser than he initially came off as. I've probably described this sensation a dozen times in my previous video on Cyberpunk, but there really isn't a comparable style to the way that this game fleshes out deeper narrative connections. You could have a game like Red Dead 2 that has an amazing cutscene where you're getting all of the information right on the spot. Or something like Bloodlines 1 where the dialogue focuses on much more realistic reactions and descriptors. And Cyberpunk has a lot of that going for it too. But having Johnny to reflect on that dialogue, to give it deeper meaning, to cause the player to mull over what they were just a part of, that's the bread and butter that takes this game in a new direction. In this case, we just witnessed Alex confronting Reed, calling him a traitor, taking out 7 years of pent-up aggression on the guy. Reed of course tells her the truth of what happened, about how she was fed a false narrative at the tail end of their mission gone wrong. But that's clearly not something that she can even begin to accept, even if it is plausible. And that's the takeaway, right? Alex is pissed for a good reason, and is wrestling between the erratic emotion of wanting to not believe Reed, and the sensible emotion that comes with the knowledge of how the NUSA works behind the scenes. Cool. Johnny's take leads us down another avenue of thought, one that looks at just how these two interacted with each other. V sees them as old friends who have a tight bond that allows them to work together again just like that. Johnny draws on his experience working for and trusting the government before they left him for dead during wartime, stating bluntly that their friendship is going to collapse very soon. You could point out that this assessment is derived exclusively from Johnny's pessimistic attitude, but he raises a solid point when he claims that if their friendship was truly that deep, then Reed would have went against his strict orders and at the very least told Alex what was happening in some way or another years and years ago. And that kind of insight is invaluable to taking what was a solid spat of conversation and working it into context for what may or may not happen down the line. It's putting ideas and scenarios in your head, keeping you on edge and allowing you to continue to ingratiate your mind into the story. At this point, I don't know if these two will continue to trust each other. But if one of them sells the other down the river, it's not an entirely unforeseen twist that's only inserted to be a twist, and instead becomes something that was foreshadowed through a segment of dialogue that can be wholesale dismissed by the player if they don't feel like listening to Johnny Silverhand yap about the government again. Our goal now is to force a voodoo boy netrunner named Slider to trace Songbird's location. The keyword there is obviously force, though you can go in loud or quiet at your discretion. The guards out front won't just let us in, but one of your dialogue options lets you casually drop the fact that you were the one who killed their leader Brigitte if that's something that you did. I wonder if keeping her alive here would have yielded a more clean result. That said, it seems that this sect of the Voodoo Boys have broken off from the main Pacifica force, something that the blind netrunner that we corner explains by showcasing a disdain for Brigitte messing around with the Blackwall. Speaking of, it's revealed rather quickly that the method that Songbird used to interface with V's relic involves utilizing the Blackwall's power. This is something that I kind of explained in my video on the vanilla game, but the Blackwall is what's trapping all of the rogue AI that could potentially wreak havoc on humanity's current technology. What many voodoo boys like Slider believe is that if the Blackwall split open and the AI were allowed to funnel out, they would view a lot of the systems that humanity has in place as outdated and unnecessary, and would begin dismantling said systems, beginning with the outright killing off of any netrunners connected to cyberspace. So basically, Slider thinks that what Songbird is doing is dangerous to mankind, and it's only a matter of time before she slips up and creates a hole in the Blackwall that could lead to his and everyone else's demise. Man, it's weird seeing various sci-fi media handle AI the way that they do. Nearly every scrap of it has contingencies for ensuring that it doesn't get out of control, and when it does, it's almost always an extinction-level event. And yet here we are calling on ChatGPT in our day-to-day lives to handle menial tasks that saps our creative thinking down to nothing with seemingly no direction to shackle it in any kind of way.
The real villain of Phantom Liberty isn't a person, it's the system.
At any rate, Slider connects us to Songbird after a trade offer that allows him to live in exchange for his services. With the Blackwall's power being the source of this connection, shit goes haywire fast, but does result in Songbird reaching out and telling V that she's unharmed but being held by Hansen in one of his facilities. The netrunner winds up short-circuiting in his chair, to which Reed seems unbothered by. And I only mention this because as easy as it is to get absorbed into his character and want to be buddies with the guy, Solomon Reed clearly has no issue killing people off and using people whenever he sees fit. It's hardly surprising, but it's something to keep in mind going forward.
You flatlined because of us.
Flatline, period.
Need you to come clean. Were you gonna off in no matter what?
Questions moot. Slider's dead. What's done is done. Come on, let's Delta out of here. Could be more of Slider's lackeys lurking around.
Take it easy, Slider.
The location that Songbird's being held in is the Black Sapphire, a gigantic hotel building that's thoroughly locked down by Hansen's men. The go-to answer is that there must be some kind of back door that we can slip in or palm we can grease to secure passage into the Sapphire, but Paco's quest did a great job at showcasing the type of paranoid and smart person that we're dealing with, one who beat the weaknesses out of his crew a while back. So we approached the Pacifica fixer for an idea, who claims that he might be able to work something out if V does 3 side gigs for him in order to boost his reputation in Dogtown as somebody who's worth doing business with. It's more or less the game telling you to fuck off and go do other shit until the time is right, but I actually like the approach. It slows things down, lets you digest what you're dealing with, and explore this area a bit more thoroughly. So back to side questing we go. It's another thing that I mentioned in the last video, but the gigs are surprisingly fleshed out for being so low on the questing totem pole. I mean, they're always kind of marked as low priority optional bits of the game, and yet they almost always have some kind of intrigue or choice attached to them that goes beyond your run-of-the-mill mercenary radiant questing that you might find in another game. And these required gigs are no different, running the gamut of helping a surgeon who's holed up in an old church, interrogating a Netwatch agent who's undercover among the Voodoo Boys ranks, and helping out 2 dipshit police officers who got caught up in a drug deal gone sideways. All of these gigs have a surprising amount of options, ways to approach, and side objectives that aid in changing how you feel about them. It's something I chose to mostly ignore just to get the previous video out, but I really am impressed every time I wind up running through one of these gigs. The only real bit of criticism that I have is more of a logistics issue. As in, you're working for a particular fixer and doing their bidding, but you can never choose to hook them into the middle of a mission and ask for their input. A prime example is the second gig that I took on for Mr. Hands, our Pacifica and now Dogtown fixer. Basically, he tells us that a woman is being blackmailed by the Voodoo Boys. If she doesn't comply with them, they'll hack her lung cybernetics and force her to stop breathing. She turned to Mr. Hands, and V is here to do the grunt work. Cool. Except the twist here involves the undercover Netwatch agent, who has been working from the inside to keep the Voodoo Boys away from the Blackwall. If we kill the guy who's threatening the woman, Netwatch claims that he'll simply be replaced by another psychopath. Yet we were contracted to kill the guy off by Mr. Hands, right? The end decision doesn't really matter, as both will likely make our fixer happy, but I couldn't help but wonder why V doesn't simply call Hands, explain the situation, and figure out the best course of action. Sure, it robs the player of that choice, but if the choice doesn't really matter, then why not make things a bit more realistic? Though, at the same time, I did have a surprisingly tough time deciding what to do here, and having Hands compliment me for working with Netwatch and promoting his name as somebody who can get shit done was a big payoff in its own way. It made me feel like I made the right decision as a mercenary, even if once again the outcome was unaffected. So maybe there is merit to player choice in these instances. I was gonna kinda gloss over all of these gigs at once, but the police officer one was fucking amazing. Basically, you have some dirty cops who decided to take up some side work for one of Hansen's main guys. You're hired by the fiancé of one of the two to extract them from a Barghest hideout and are instructed to try to not kill any of the gang members here. I'm not stealthy. I try to be, but I'm not. So yeah, I kill them all. Which, you know, is fine. Kinda. I get to the 2 officers who are caked in blood and explain that they were tasked with obtaining some illicit drugs from a scavenger who stole from the guy that they report to. The problem is that somehow this dude took 7 ounces of so-called sin coke, shoved it down his throat, and promptly died. In a panic, the officers tried to cut him open only to discover that it had dissolved already. So yeah, you walk these guys out and lo and behold, here comes the boss man.
We tried taking the stuff out from him, like from the inside.
Inside? I don't even. So all this blood?
Wanted to get it back for you, but it all kinda, dissolved in him.
Let me get this straight now. You 2 fools let this scazzbag OD on your watch, then slice him open after the queso blancos are already dissolved? As if that's not enough, you hire a merc, cause you're scared you get 2 to the back of your skulls?
How sums it up?
Oh, you can't make this shit up. Fucking badges, man. Protect and serve my ass.
I love that honesty is what pays off here. It really ties the absurdity of this entire quest together in the best way. And of course, that part where I should have been stealthy comes into play as well.
I'd give a measly 7 ounces for a story like that any day. You're free to go, officers.
Ought to check on the boys upstairs, boss.
Touché. Bear with us a minute, sec. Check their biomarkers.
SIGs are all flat, boss.
Scratch what I said. Afraid I can't let you go.
Honestly, it's one of the best random quests that I've played just because of how well it was told. Which is crazy because objectively, you talk to a woman, fight some guys, escort some people, fight some more guys. It's not really groundbreaking gameplay, right? But the story itself is hilarious and really well told, which is why I'll always put story first and gameplay second. Before I continue on, let's all collectively, in an orderly fashion, move over to my sponsor for this video, Where Winds Meet. Where Winds Meet is a video game if you believe in such things. It's got the whole free-roaming open-world RPG thing going for it, it's got Chinese martial arts, it's got visuals on par with AAA games, and it's completely free to play if you believe in such things. April 2nd marked a monumental milestone for Where Winds Meet as the developers have discovered snow and ice, things that we once thought to be long lost. The appropriately named Snowland map brings with it 5 brand new bosses, all of which have their own unique mechanics and fighting style. And if you're a big fan of the Tang Dynasty, you'll be absolutely stoked to hear that they brought the Hang Blade to the table. I know, the Hang Heads are eating good with this update. If the prospect of a video game that you've never played before sparks your interest, feel free to check my link in the description to jump in and try it out. Where Winds Meet is available on PC, PS5, and mobile devices, but not the Game Boy Color. Yet. Thanks, guys. After wrapping up your tasks, V gets the opportunity to meet with Mr. Hands face to face. It's a simultaneously whelming and underwhelming encounter. Because the mystique to Hands is that you only ever see his hands when you talk to him, so witnessing his face does have that aura to it. That said, you've never really had a crazy one-on-one conversation with the guy in any meaningful capacity outside of work, right? So you don't really care what he looks like. It was honestly never a question that I had, truth be told. And I think that if the only point to revealing his face was to have a reveal, then this interaction would have fell flat. But I do like the effort put into it outside of the meeting. The secret floor tucked into this giant pyramid of a club, the opulent surroundings, overhearing Hands talking to his young daughter on the phone like an average father would. All of these little things add up to what this game does best, immerse the player in a specific mindset. Ironically, what he tells you isn't anything that we didn't know already, he just gives some specifics about what went down. It's clear that Hands is deeply entrenched in the political happenings in Night City and now wants to sweep Dogtown out from under Hansen in order to expand his influence. And I find that to be a particularly fun and intriguing set of motivators, one that I would love to learn more about. But there's no real option to delve deeper into those topics as V is clearly uninterested in any sort of political talks. I guess it's meant to be more of a portrayal of who Hands is and why he operates the way that he does rather than be an avenue for someone like V to explore, and I'm not unhappy with that outcome either, truth be told. Heading to meet with Reed has V once again collapsing, which, yeah, it thematically makes sense, right? He's dying. That's the whole reason for this storyline existing the way that it does. But man, it really does feel like the writers lean on that trope a lot in order to force people closer to V. We've seen it with Johnny, with Judy, with Pan Am, and now with Solomon Reed, who picks V up and instantly starts spilling his guts about shit that he's never talked about. I guess on one hand, why would Sol just start telling V this stuff when he hardly knows him, right? But on the other hand, we just witnessed him not only being willing to discard a random netrunner, but also his friend who he worked closely with by not telling her what had happened for 7 years. So the tone doesn't quite hit the same way as I think the writers hoped that it would. Ironically, what he tells you isn't anything that we didn't know already, he just gives some specifics about what went down. Namely, that he was the price that Arasaka demanded for a ceasefire between them and the NUSA, and that Songbird was the one who allowed Arasaka's agents to attempt to kill Reed. While the overall event isn't anything new to us, the last bit does cause V to question whether Reed is doing this out of the goodness of his heart or if he's doing it for revenge against Songbird. And I like that bit of uncertainty being painted into the picture also. The story avenues went from a simple rescue mission where everybody likes each other to Reed potentially seeking vengeance, or to Songbird thinking that Reed wants that and attempting to end him before he can end her. We'll see how that goes, I guess. From here, Alex meets up with us, gives us the sitrep using the info from Hans, and away we go to infiltrate this fortress of a hotel. So this entire thing is a bit of a cinematic circus of events like you would expect. There's no real choices or different methods to your approach beyond just wholesale trying to fuck the operation and going loud for no reason. You scuba dive through an old flooded entry point, take out a few guards, and commandeer a sniper rifle to cover Reed as he moves through his half of the job to unite with V. Again, mechanically, it's nothing incredible. That's kind of Cyberpunk's thing. And honestly, I could see somebody being less than enthused with this entire affair. For me, as always, story is king and immersion is a close second, and this entire ordeal felt really fun to experience. This is particularly true when you finally meet up with Reed, don some flashy party attire, and head into this magnificent looking club. I mean, this shit is goddamn cool. Some of the best visuals that we've seen out of this game in my opinion. And the conversations that follow mirror these visuals, finally getting into the real meat of what may be happening with this entire DLC's plotline. You mingle around the club, noting Kurt Hansen's location and pointing out various celebrities to Reed before Songbird beckons V up to the second floor. There she is in the, lack of flesh, and something's immediately off. The way that she talks to V isn't necessarily laced with betrayal, but the way that she's being treated and allowed to roam freely finally has V beginning to puzzle something together without Johnny's help for once.
Lied to me, Song. Said you had the cure. No mention of a fuckload of flaming hoops I gotta jump through to get it.
It was no trick. Just didn't tell you the whole story.
The problem is that this isn't a standard "I was working for Hansen the entire time" sort of affair, as Songbird is dying in a very similar way to V. Of course, her disease doesn't stem from a malfunctioning relic, it stems from messing around with the Black Wall's power. I'm kind of two minds about this plot. On one hand, yeah, Songbird having a good reason to genuinely work for Hansen even if she intends to double-cross him is a boon towards making this entire affair a more difficult choice, especially given what has happened in the past between her, Myers, and Reed. But on the other hand, it feels like once again we've been steered towards this sort of sympathy garnering from the very beginning with how V has acted towards her. And I'm just not a fan of that, because you had somebody who V had no attachment to, who he should have been a lot more skeptical of, but he treated her like he knew her for years or something. And when the chips are down and the possibility is revealed that Songbird may have intentionally crashed the president's ship here so that she could defect to Hansen's side for a cure, it's now hard to blame her for choosing this path because of her condition. So there was never really a moment when V was able to formulate his opinion about her, and it was only ever other people who we also didn't know who tried to critique her in any sort of way. Meanwhile, she continues to claim that she was taken prisoner, that none of this was on purpose. It's not a bad plot at all, and I'm definitely nitpicking. I mean, truth be told, this is kind of how Cyberpunk has always been under CDPR, right? You're playing a guy who does have a personality and opinions, but is still ultimately made to be piloted by a player as if they were playing any other random open-world video game. And that mix of player agency and set-in-stone personality for V has its high points and its low points. I just think the setup for Phantom Liberty was one of the low points for me. And I think this would have turned out a lot better if Songbird truly was a devious human who was able to manipulate V's actual emotional responses via the Black Wall's power, pretending to be sick in order to get him to help, and then revealing later that she really just wanted power after being knocked around for her entire life. At least, that's how I felt about this in this moment. This is future me, reading out a script from somebody who was midway through this shit. I do think they wound up making up for a lot of their mistakes, but we'll get to all of that, so just hang tight. Either way, what Songbird needs from Hansen is an old buried piece of AI tech that should give her the power to properly interface with the Black Wall and cure her from her condition. And V's condition, of course. He's definitely going to have a happy ending with all of this. From here, Reed storms off to think to himself after Hansen shows up and rips Songbird away. When you meet with him, the conclusion that he's come to is that Songbird is a traitor to the NUSA, and while she's still his friend, he wants to keep her at arm's length and not trust a word that's coming out of her mouth. So basically, it looks like this thing's gearing up to be a choose Reed or choose Songbird situation, unless Myers worms her way back into the picture too. What Songbird left us with is a way to get to the tech that Hansen has under lock and key. With a little FIA magic, we can steal the identities of two extremely talented netrunning twins who are in attendance at this party. This scene is probably one of my favorite moments in the DLC, and maybe even the greater game after thinking about it more. While I wouldn't say that it completely mirrors the big poker scene in Casino Royale, it does embody a lot of the energy of it. The knowledge that we're playing a dangerous game outside of this roulette table, that we're dealing with these twins who are clearly exceedingly intelligent, that we're trying to win big while chatting these two up and scanning their psychological profiles to effectively build up the perfect disguise. Initially, Reed was supposed to join us at a staggered rate, but goes MIA after V hits the table, causing us to have to try to engage with both of them at the same time. And there's this constant tension of potentially getting caught, of saying the wrong thing and not getting these two to engage with you enough to scan their brains. And it's paired with a very human desire to try to win a bunch of money at the table. I do think this entire scene would have been better if we were playing some form of poker, but the basic idea of betting on red or black repeatedly does keep the dialogue moving at a continuous and comfortable rate also. So I get that that's why the devs went that route.
Oh, come. V is just being cordial. N'est-ce pas, V? You weren't snooping just now,
24,
were you?
even, black.
The conclusion of all of this has V either losing or winning his all-in bet before Hansen strides over to him and tells him that he's quite aware of who V and Reed are. And the immediate question is, of course, why are we still walking free? Hansen answers that pretty succinctly when he spells out that Songbird is his ally now, and that if we continue to mess with him, he's going to reveal to the world that the NUSA has been jeopardizing humanity by forcing one of their agents to poke around the Blackwall. So basically, we're being let go to deliver a message to Myers, an attempt to get her to back down. It also adds another layer of mystery to this entire affair. Has Songbird actually defected because she was forced to sacrifice her body and nearly sell her soul for the NUSA's gain? Or is she only pretending to do so that she can access this AI tech and repair herself before falling back into the ranks? Or was she truly kidnapped like she was claiming that she was? It's certainly intriguing from every angle, and I do have to give credit to that aspect in this entire endeavor. When we finally make it back out to the streets of Dogtown, Reed heads off to start the next phase of the plan. So it's back to waiting around and doing other shit while we wait for his contact. And honestly, I didn't do much of note besides track down the new tarot cards that the DLC brings with it and report back to Misty for her analysis. No idea what the fuck happened with this, but someone did not tell the voice actress how Misty sounded before the DLC.
I'm not sure simple caution's enough. Bad fate's stronger than that. But follow your heart, I always say. Even in defeat, you'll remain true to yourself.
I think so. Not easy, you know. Putting my life back together.
I mean, that's fucking crazy different. I looked it up to make sure they didn't outright replace the actress, and apparently they didn't. That said, they did replace Mr. Hand's actor, and Male V was apparently sitting too close to his microphone when he was recording during COVID. I hadn't really noticed that last one at all, but when I started to listen for it, I did start to hear it. I guess it just didn't bother me that much. Apparently some people were driven nuts by that though. It's worth noting that there really aren't many quests that are included with Phantom Liberty. I know I praised Paco's before, but that's really the only big one besides all of the new side gigs and tarot cards. I kind of went into this entire ordeal expecting like 5 or 6 solid and relatively lengthy side quests based off of how the Witcher 3's DLC was handled. And I have to admit that I am a little disappointed overall in that department. Then again, maybe it is my fault for not doing the side gig stuff. Onward to the actual planning of this, I guess, heist rescue mission hybrid thing. The plan is simple on paper, a little more convoluted when it comes to the details. The basics involve hijacking a high-end automated taxi system via one of its connection points, putting the twins from earlier out of commission, and hopping back into the taxi while impersonating them. Then we meet with Hansen, secure the AI tech, and spring Songbird loose. Easy enough. While the presentation of this entire affair is as involved as it always is, I honestly felt not as connected to the plot at this stage. I know that it might be a weird thing to say this far in, but it is the truth. The fact of the matter is that we really don't have a strong connection to these characters at this stage. Reed is definitely our biggest link, but he's intentionally been made out to be a professional, somebody who was born to serve the NUSA while claiming to care for all of his subordinates. And that's an important distinction to make. Reed will claim that he cares for these people as if they're his close friends, but he always talks about them as if they're simply his responsibility more so than individuals who he is concerned for. It makes for a very realistically written character, but not one who we naturally root for. And that's the main difference between Keanu Reeves and Idris Elba as far as this game is concerned. Keanu can play a complete asshole, but you want to see him succeed because of the actor. Meanwhile, Idris can play somebody who's noble but flawed, and the skill with which he plays the character winds up with you not being as concerned with him succeeding. But that in turn creates a fundamental issue with this chunk of the story. If Reed is the character who we've interacted with the most, who we've gotten to know the best, and our natural conclusion is to see him as somebody who has given his life to this government who has literally betrayed him, a company man who focuses on results first and foremost, then what connection do we really have here at this point? Songbird is the princess in a gilded cage who we're told to care about. Myers has been gone since the first 15% of the DLC, and Alex is clearly a side character who isn't really super well defined. And I gotta think that this was the same conclusion that the writers arrived at around this point, because Songbird calls in the middle of this planning phase and requests that we chat with her at a location on the outskirts of Dogtown around midnight. Of course, she's still projecting herself into his vision because she's still captured, I guess. But what she begins sputtering out winds up being a much more concrete and relatable set of information and background from her end. Basically, she walks you more through how her disease is progressing, likening it to a mix of early onset Alzheimer's and the idea that some kind of Blackwall spawn personality seems to be trying to take her mind over. She explains that she was from Brooklyn before Reed knocked on her door and claimed that the NUSA could use her skill set. Of course, it wasn't really an option, as the guy threatened to let Militech know that she was the one who was fucking with them for a while she was net running. So she kind of blames him for her involvement in the government and her life turning out this way. But as established before, Reed's biggest flaw is that he unquestioningly obeys the NUSA and was likely acting under direct orders. So this entire fiasco happened when Songbird saw an opportunity to take her life back, to find a cure and rid herself of this government body that's only used her throughout her life from 19 years old onward. So yes, she did conspire with Hansen to ground the president's ship in Dogtown. What she didn't expect was that Hansen's goons would shoot down the ship and cause the deaths of nearly everybody on board. It was a naive and desperate attempt at seizing her life back, and while the initial deal between her and Hansen was to trade the president for this AI tech, the new deal is that she unlocked the tech for Hansen in exchange for her being allowed to use it. Long story short, Hansen believes that the technology houses some kind of dirt that he can use to get the NUSA to back off from attacking him outright, and Songbird now rightfully believes that as soon as it's opened, Hansen will have her killed. This is definitely what the story needed to pull me back into it, and it 100% lends more of a reason to root for Songbird, to want to see her make it through this. That said, I'm not completely on her side. This development doesn't absolve the pacing issues that were initially presented at the start of Phantom Liberty. It does help to push into a better direction, but it needs a little bit more juice to get me fully on board. This might be a me thing, honestly, but it's just how I feel in this moment, and there's definitely still opportunity for the story to unfold into that extra layer that really ties everything into a better overall plot. Now, the writers do try to make Alex into more of a human after all of this also, and that one's a bit more of a miss for me, because on one hand, yeah, she talks about how she wanted to be an actress when she was younger and asks V about who he would be if he weren't here and all that. She dances and has a good time trying to shake off the nerves before the mission, and that does make her more likable and relatable, but I guess it feels a bit forced. Like, you can see the intention in the scene immediately, and it doesn't really feel like something that naturally occurred so much as it was something that was included to give Alex more of a place here. Maybe I'm complaining about nothing, but I would say it is a fine conclusion overall, regardless of feeling so intentional. Our final bit of prep work is something that Reed pulls the strings to put in place. What he asserts is that Songbird won't come with us willingly, and he's right about that. She intends to get the cure for our shared condition and escape to Europe to undergo surgery. Actually, it might have been escaping to the moon. I don't know. She's escaping. Later on, she does go to the fucking moon, so... Oh, fucking spoilers. Holy shit. God damn, dude. Should've said there were spoilers in this fucking video. Oh, no. What Reed claims to want is to put her someplace safe, away from prying eyes, and chat with her. Once common ground is established, Reed implies that he intends to help her accomplish the same goal, presumably hiding her away from Myers and the NUSA. And that may be the best thing that the writers could have done in this scenario. Like I said, Solomon Reed is a company man through and through, at least from what he's displayed. He has an emotional attachment to his people, but seems to always end up using them when the chips are down and his country demands it. This makes for a very hard to read scenario, because Saul could be telling the truth here. He might fully intend to make things right for Songbird. He consistently says all of the right words to aid in that assessment of his intentions. That he knows that she's scared, that she was broken by the system, that he's trying to put himself in her shoes. He continuously claims that he's trying to understand her, but every action that he's taken has shown his true motivations throughout this DLC. He's loyal to a fault, somebody who was thrown under the bus and then got up for seconds. And Songbird is a walking time bomb who consistently makes short-sighted decisions without thinking about the potential ramifications. You're choosing between two very flawed humans, and both answers seem wrong in this moment. And the irony is that both are claiming to want the same result, to secure Songbird's escape. The difference is that Songbird wants to cut ties as quickly and messily as she feels needs to be done, and Reed wants to control the situation like he always does. In fact, a lot of the things that he says about this, about what he's going to do, are so vague that you don't actually know what he's going to do. What he pushes V to do is have some state-of-the-art technology surgically implanted within V's faceplate. Said tech will allow him to cut through Songbird's ridiculously capable Blackwall-powered defenses and render her unconscious enough to get her to a safe house that Reed controls. During the surgery, Johnny makes an appearance for V to bounce ideas off of.
What would you do in my shoes, Johnny?
I am in your shoes, dumbass.
Once again, for the umpteenth time, Johnny Silverhand puts all of this in perspective in immaculate fashion. He states that both of these people are telling the truth as best they can, that Songbird wants to escape and that Reed wants to help. But the idea of how each of their plans might go are muddled and hazy, a difficult to assess situation that results in an inconclusive answer.
But honest to God, V, not fucking around? I don't know. Got no goddamn clue.
This entire setup is the juice that I was hoping for. Is it perfect? No, I don't think so. But it's good enough to be good. It's kind of like, if you've ever played the latest Doom trilogy from 2016 to Eternal to the Dark Ages, most people agree that Eternal was the best of the bunch, myself included. And when the Dark Ages came out, there was all of this discourse about how it doesn't stack up against the previous game. And it got to a point where a lot of reactionaries immediately deemed the game as outright bad, a genuinely unenjoyable video game. And to each their own, and all that, but I went into the Dark Ages expecting it to be bad because of that, but it was still fun. Nowhere near the level of Eternal, and it did have some pretty bad moments, but it was still just overall an enjoyable game. That's kinda how I feel about Phantom Liberty so far. It's not on the same level as the base game, at least not yet, but it's still good. Sometimes games and DLC can just be good without being great and not be a blight on the industry. At this point, I would say that I just don't trust Reed to act in our best interests, even if I like him more as a character. If the decision had to be made right now, I'd go with whatever chaotic plan Songbird has cooked up. But we still have time for that. The mission finally kicks off as V begins scanning for the car with our twin netrunners at an intersection. The specifics of how this goes down are really cool, as V tracks them to a meeting that they have with Hansen, breaks into their trunk, hooks into the car's system, and seizes control once they've made their way back to the vehicle. Once he takes it to the garage where Reed and Alex lurk, they pull the two runners out of the car and summarily execute them on the spot. I think this is the defining moment of the mess that V has found himself in the middle of, because before this, it was kinda just a spy game. Yeah, we kill off some of Hansen's goons to get into the club, sure, but those were just these kind of armed thugs. We did all of the average bits that accompany any other espionage adventure. But killing these two after chatting them up so that we can more or less steal their skins is a step beyond, and V can respond appropriately.
It is a game. Your fucking spy game, they weren't playing. They were innocent.
That's not quite how I describe two pro-criminals. These innocents, as you call them, wouldn't hesitate to rob you for everything you got, or put a bullet in your back.
And that's the kind of justification that these types of people use to assert their will upon society at large. Don't let them live, they could get free. They would have killed you also. They're not good people, so we can do this without thinking further about it. Johnny warned V of this, but it's never really had as much weight as it does now. Impersonating one of the twins is obviously more than just donning their clothes, as that Green Goblin technology comes back into play once more. This is a seriously fucking cool setup, as you now take on the form of Amérique Cassel, a French netrunner who refuses to drink, collects classic cars, stores his memories on external databanks to keep his mind sharp, and is highly allergic to strawberries. Most of these supererogatory details come into play as V has to tone down his usual quips, humor, and slang to embody this guy as close to the synaptic level as possible. Or at least, that's the premise going in. The reality is that you meet with Hansen and he throws a few questions your way about various topics. How much you won or lost at the casino, what kind of car you were in town to purchase, whether you'll join him for a drink, how you left your previous job, and they're all pretty straightforward when paired with the cheat sheet that you gain access to in the bottom left of your screen. But the feeling of being on edge, of needing to focus for any kind of curveball that may be thrown your way, that premise alone carries this scene and makes it as tense as it is. Your mind sharpening to focus on what's being asked while studying the bottom left of your screen and determining when to ignore any optional prompt that might pop up, such as questioning Hansen about his knife. I don't even know if asking about the knife would have given V away, but I made the choice to let silence carry for a few seconds rather than risk it. That kind of questioning really helps the scene along, as every option now has a weight to it that could make or break this mission. Now that I'm thinking about it, I never went back to try to fail this and see what happens. Maybe it's just a game over. Fuck, I should fucking figure that out, dude.
I thought you didn't drink.
I do not, but I understand the importance of ritual. It would be rude to reject Siberian hospitality.
Did you really expect I'd be fooled so easily? A regrettable miscalculation.
So here we are, following Songbird down to this AI tech that looks like a goddamn bomb, and the question of who to side with comes up immediately. It's really not an easy answer. You're choosing between the chaotic mess of Songbird's freedom or the clean and no-frills uncertainty that is Reed's option. I'm gonna do both, but I'll start with my initial choice, siding with Songbird. I don't think I've ever played a story where I had nearly as much reason to choose one side over the other. I mean, unless you count a game where I just don't care about the story, I guess that's the only other time. Because even with my lack of connection to Songbird and the pull that I feel towards Saul, I still think that this is the route where we're less inclined to get fucked over by the NUSA. I think. Either way, V gives the signal, and surprisingly enough, Alex absolutely eviscerates Hansen in the blink of an eye. Which is fucking awesome to watch, but also a bit shocking. Like the way that Kurt Hansen has been built up to be one of the biggest opponents in this game of chess that we've been thrust into made us facing him down in combat all but guaranteed. And yet I don't feel let down by this turn of events. I think that's probably a Cyberpunk thing. The combat is fun, but it isn't necessarily incredible, and I would have just steamrolled any human opponent. I don't think I was dying to face off with Hansen as much as I wanted to chat with him. Just like I never really cared to talk with Adam Smasher, but would have been let down if Rogue took him out before I got a chance to move. Guess that's the difference between a menacing monster of a man being built up over the course of an act and somebody who's essentially referred to as the King of Shit Mountain. The escape with Songbird is eventful but not fulfilling. Like, you walk with her as she hacks this stadium full of technology, soldiers, turrets, all that, and you can command her to activate various heaps of machinery to kill groups of soldiers while you assist, and that's definitely fun, but then you just escape. The entire time you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Alex and Reed to cut you off and fight you, for the goddamn president to swoop down in a helicopter, no matter how unrealistic it might be. And that's just it. Had those things happened, maybe short of Alex specifically since she was close by, I'd be chastising the writers for the predictable and unrealistic nature of those encounters. So this is the route that they chose, and I do respect that. Because after escaping and fucking off to Night City for a bit, Reed calls. And while this call isn't filled with swearing and anger, his cold and measured tone is telling.
Songbird's gone to war, taking on our own country. We, the FIA, we're gonna find you too. You have exactly nowhere to run, V.
Reed doesn't tell you that he was going to torture her and lock her away. He doesn't say that the president wanted Songbird and that he was going to deliver her, but his tone and words aren't that of somebody who is happy for Songbird. He claimed he wanted to help her before, but this conversation all but reinforces that he likely never would have. And this is it for now. You can go back to doing whatever random little side quests you can find while the ominous threat of Reed's FIA looms large in V's life. I will say that for as much as I applauded the writers on taking the more realistic approach in the escape, it's not like V escaped to another country. I mean, I just went back to my apartment in the middle of Night City. Tracking V isn't really an issue. And it's not like the FIA couldn't just be taking a couple of days to draw up their counterattack while also targeting Songbird. But it does seem odd that Reed states bluntly that they will find a man who has essentially been living at the same place that he has been for a while. I guess it just would have been nice to see some mysterious agent types posted outside of all of V's residencies until this is resolved, you know? It wouldn't have been hard to do and would have added a lot more to the immersion factor of being hunted by a federal agency. Speaking of, the writers did at least think to have Dogtown in absolute chaos now that Hansen is dead. Barghest soldiers are gunning down people in the streets, lashing out at whoever seems to be out and about. Thankfully, you can cure this outbreak by reporting to Mr. Hands in his funny little downtown pyramid. What he wants V to do is to use his newfound technology to impersonate a Cuban mercenary legend named Aguilar, the sight of whom causes any Barghest member's blood to run cold. At first I thought this was going to be a little gimmick quest that repurposes this fancy, cutting-edge technology that V got a hold of during the main quest, but it's a really well done idea that takes V from simply impersonating somebody to transforming into somebody feared among Dogtown.
Do you know what happens when someone in Havana lights a cigar?
Somewhere in the world, Aguilar takes a life.
So they say.
The issue that Hands presents is that Hansen's former right-hand man Bennett is the right guy to take things over, but the Barghest accountant has decided to try to seize control instead. We're to talk the accountant down and walk away, which would have been as simple as meeting with him and intimidating the shit out of him. However, the accountant claims that Bennett has been compromised by Arasaka. Ironically, when I bitched about V never looping his fixer into a mission earlier, apparently the writers thought the same, as Johnny suggests that V dial up Mr. Hands to hear his opinion. Of course, Hands sees the accountant's claim as somebody who is desperate and encourages V to make Bennett the new leader of Dogtown. This leads to an array of choices from start to finish. Kill or don't kill the accountant, snoop on Bennett to see if he's actually compromised or don't, choose to either make Bennett or the accountant the leader by using Aguilar's influence. It's just a solid side quest, really well done. Though I will say that Songbird called midway through it, and that really made me want to immediately dump the quest to head off to find her. It's something that's happened a few times in the base game, and as always, it's realistic for it to happen, but man does it split my attention hard. Regardless, I wound up sparing the accountant, catching Bennett at the meeting with Arasaka and shooting some sense into him, and then making him the leader at Hansen's wake. It's a great quest, but you have to understand that I was hit with this right in the middle of it.
Don't sound so hot. Sure you're all right?
quite. It is what it is.
Okay. Should I be worried?
Won't help if you do. Just do your part.
I'm trying to think of the moment where I started to care about seeing Songbird make it through all of this. I mean, I was kind of dunking on how buddy-buddy V was at the start, and how it caused me to view Songbird as this forced damsel in distress. And that's still kind of true, but I think somewhere along the way I did wind up wanting her to succeed. Maybe it was when I chose her over Reed. I mean, I picked my side, I might as well see it through. That might be all there is to it, but I still think that it's worth pointing out that something must be going right with the writing to make me feel this way instead of apathetic towards Songbird's plight. Meeting with the Netrunner has you finding her in a dire state. The plan from here involves V walking through a spaceport, infiltrating a cordoned off part that's under construction, and getting Songbird on a ship to the moon so that she can synthesize a cure for both of you. This is about an hour-long mission, and it's probably the best in the game in my opinion. Actually, there's another one that's coming up in the other endings, but we'll get to that. But this one takes the mundane idea of walking through a souped-up futuristic airport, pairs it with the idea of a form of espionage, and then just lets loose in an explosive climax. But first, the spaceport. V is directed to maintain a natural look, as if he belongs there. And I just fuck that up immediately. It's funny because every time I've seen a symbol for a body, reflex, technical ability, or corpo check, I just jam that fucker. And it pretty much has always paid off in some way or another. This is the first time to my knowledge where I tried to hit this worker with an intimidation check and he just tases the fuck out of V. Which works because spaceport policy has them disarming all combat enhancements in order to get through security, and I obviously didn't bring any weapons. So yeah, I thought I was going to hit a game over screen, but I wake up in port custody with Johnny practically laughing at me, which is an awesome alternative route to all of this. But I decided to reload because, come on. This time I managed to get through security with a little help from Songbird and slink over to the closed off part of the spaceport. A bit of logistics here. Songbird sold some NUSA secrets in order to secure passage with a particular pilot who has arranged a rocket at the part of the port that's under construction. I know it seems obvious for the game to cover its bases and flesh out the details, but that isn't as common in games as you would think. Movies tend to operate the same way. More often than not, I'm sitting here going, wait, how did he manage to do all of that? It takes a team of writers to care to answer those questions rather than rely on somebody simply being the main character. We wind up where I imagine I would have started had I went the custody route, so it all seems to sync up eventually. This is the first time that I've actually cared to try to stealth, which was difficult for me with my lack of intelligence. I mean, after all this DLC and base game, I'm nearly maxed out in everything besides intelligence, and I'm feeling that decision immensely now. Still, it isn't all that bad. We make it to the top. Songbird wound up bailing from the van and is now pulled up via a fire hose off the side of the building. That's when Myers finally makes her grand entrance alongside Reed, showing her true colors at last. Well, I say true colors, but she's really being about as direct as she always has been. I've been thinking about this for a while, and while my initial assessment of Reed and Myers were that they were untrustworthy government types, I've also literally never given them a true chance to see how they would act had I placed Songbird in their laps. That's the beauty of this plotline. These people are intentionally hard to read because they're literally top-level government drones. Saul might say that he wants to help, but how do you know that until it's too late? And now that you're slithering through these vents and listening to them chat, the initial reaction when you hear Myers order Reed to kill Songbird no matter what has you going, aha, I knew I couldn't trust them. But I mean, we've helped a fugitive to the government escape with NUSA's secrets. She's a liability in every sense of the word. How else would you expect them to act given the situation that we've thrown them headlong into? If there was ever a reason to replay this from another angle, it's this moment right here, if nothing more than to confirm our suspicions or to alter our viewpoint entirely. At this point, the FIA Black Ops unit has gone full into conflict with the spaceport security. And that's an important distinction to note. Night City is a sovereign city-state controlled by megacorporations that has nothing to do with the NUSA. It's the reason that we hadn't really seen these government types until the events of Phantom Liberty. So the spaceport security has no reason to listen to a foreign invading force, and that chaos is what leads to a bloodbath of carnage on our way to the rocket. It's definitely tougher than Arasaka Tower, which makes sense given that this is a DLC, but also retroactively makes the ending assault of the base game more of a letdown. The fight through the spaceport is set piece after set piece, a crazy sprint that has you taking on both sides while ducking an assault chopper, getting to a control room, protecting Songbird while she summons the train to the rocket, and eventually resorting to hooking into her systems while she harnesses the power of the Blackwall once again, giving us this awesome looking Force Lightning sort of power. It's as destructive as Reed predicted it would be, a prophecy fulfilled by this woman who would kill innocents to get her way. Though at the same time, had the NUSA not decided to literally invade a sovereign spaceport, well, this also would not have happened. So it's just as much their fault. When it all comes to an end, we find ourselves chatting with a disheveled Songbird on the train ride over to the moon rocket. She goes on about how Myers has always been this determined and results-oriented, not caring who she trampled. She claims that she regrets betraying Reed when she basically sent the Arasaka agents in to have him killed, but that she had no choice but to execute her orders. And that seems to be the primary difference between Reed and Songbird. Solomon Reed knows and understands his role. He doesn't take things personally, and I'm willing to bet that he genuinely forgave Songbird for the attempt on his life. Songbird was indoctrinated into this world of espionage, and was never given the choice to actually commit herself to the FIA in that way. She doesn't want to be a part of this in the way that Reed is, she just wants to live free, and is willing to do anything to accomplish that, including betraying V.
Neural Matrix V can only be used once.
It's interesting because I wasn't exactly shocked by this information. I don't know why I had this idea in my mind, but I was pretty sure that Phantom Liberty doesn't have an alternate ending to the entire game, so this whole time I was trying to figure out which part of this was going to go wrong. And I thought that this would lead to less enjoyment of the overall plot, but what it did was cause me to accept Songbird as a person, strangely enough. Because you can play this two different ways, either have V respond with rage towards this person who took him through hell knowing that he was wasting his own life to save hers, or you can have him accept that part of her. And the decision to forgive her was easier than I thought it would be, because the thing that drives Songbird is the same thing that's been driving V for this entire game. There really is something to be said about how committed the writers of this game were to crafting a realistic story with realistic people. I still think that V got attached too fast, but after that, everything else was put forward with realism in mind. And I'll be the first to admit that I occasionally desire a plot that's against that policy. Even in this video, I put forth the idea that Songbird should have manipulated V's emotions, having her turn out to be a more sinister version of herself. It's a fun story, sure, but it's definitely video gamey. What we instead got was a human who has made mistake after mistake who continues to do so because it's in her nature. Her desire to live free is selfish, but a natural yearning to have. She doesn't want to have innocent people die for her to live, but she's not strong enough or selfless enough to not go through with this plan. She genuinely wanted to help save V also, but when she found out in the last moments that she wouldn't be able to help both of them, she still chose to string him along under false pretenses. She's honestly much more of an impressively written character than I ever thought that she would be after her introduction. But this isn't quite over yet. The writer's commitment to realism within their universe continues as Reed has decided that joining the fight wouldn't be as smart as beelining it for the pretty obvious rocket that's fueled and ready to go. And what we initially get is a conversation that's the continuation of the uncertainty of Reed's character. We have literally never given Solomon Reed a chance to prove himself. We've only judged him based off of his words. And now that we've already stabbed him in the back, how can we trust him now?
Back on the roof, Myers ordered her killed. You didn't protest.
You heard us.
Every last word.
The situation's changed. Just leave Songbird to me. I can still help her.
And as this chat continues to unravel, Reed's motivations in this moment become more clear as he claims that Songbird will answer for treason, but that he still wants to help her through that process. It's almost tactical how mixed his messaging is, like a slurry of kind thoughts and cold reality, like the entire point behind his words are to muddle V's emotions. The only question is if he's doing it intentionally or not. Eventually, the ultimatum does drop though. Either leave Songbird with Reed and walk away, or fight to the death.
You got 3 seconds. 1.
Reed.
2.
Damn it to hell, Reed. I'm sorry, man. Fuck.
I know I've been saying this kind of thing for a while now, but do you know just how much restraint it takes a dev team to not go further beyond what was just presented mechanically? Do you realize just how many other studios would have had Alex chase down these two at lightning speeds for a mini-boss fight, or had Myers swoop down in her chopper to fight V in some kind of mecha Hitler suit? Or had Reed activate his super turbo anime death machine mode that he keeps under wraps and only reveals to those who he's about to kill? There's a point where a video game becomes something more than it is, and it starts and ends with the amount of restraint that a dev team shows when handling these big moments. And some people will naturally disagree with that. They'll lament the fact that there was no big boss fight here, that Metal Gear Rex didn't spring out from behind the launch platform for the ultimate showdown. These are the same people who revere the fact that Fallout New Vegas has an ending where you can talk down the boss of the game with a speech check. Games that wield the composure to push the medium beyond high-stakes turret sections, world-ending boss battles, and obligatory escape sequences in favor of rich storytelling will always be my favorite additions to the industry. And I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying here. I don't want every game to quit having boss battles or any of the other stuff that I mentioned. Well, maybe turret sections. Those things are necessary and expected in a lot of games, but understanding when you actually need a boss and when it would be more narratively impactful to leave it out is the difference between a run-of-the-mill AAA developer and a master at work. And I don't think this would have had anywhere near the same emotional impact if the end result had us standing over Reed's newly revealed Terminator body while he looks up at us and tells us that we'll regret this or whatever. From here, the ending goes off without any other hitches. Songbird is strapped into the rocket and V watches with Johnny as it takes off into the sky.
She has just a bit of what I lacked entirely. Fucking luck.
Luck played no part in it, Johnny. You and her just wanted different things.
Really? So do tell. What was it I wanted so badly?
Applause. Cheers. Did absolutely everything to please the crowd.
Nah. Maybe.
I like this reflection at the end. The idea that Johnny and V, two souls who have been entrenched in a slow, guaranteed death for a while now, are now contemplating just how far they may have to go to survive after what Songbird just demonstrated. When it's finally done, the outro cinematic is, it's fucking awesome. This is a cool-ass Kojima intro of an outro. Super well done. But before going all the way back to choosing Reed, we gotta know what happens if we just give Songbird up to him at the end of this, right? Obviously, calling Reed and telling him that we'll surrender the woman has him agreeing to V's terms of synthesizing the cure from the AI tech in place of Songbird getting it. And the best part about this entire exchange is just how desperate V sounds. In this reality, he's wounded by this netrunner who took him for a ride, who stabbed him in the back the same way that she did with everybody else. Whereas I, the player, felt at peace with the idea of Songbird living on in place of V, it does make sense for our mercenary to not feel the same way when she reveals the truth to him. Of course, I also have the benefit of knowing how the rest of the vanilla game plays out, and I'm assuming that that's the main reason for how I feel about all of this. Johnny, of course, gives V shit for selling out at the end.
Thought about how you're gonna spend your 30 pieces of silver?
But the aftermath doesn't have the rocker permanently upset with V like when he chooses Arasaka, and is now more saddened at the idea of Songbird being caged again. And so here we are again, playing the waiting game while we hope that Reed contacts us to hold up his end of the bargain. I thought about reloading to see if this plays out the same way if we choose Reed immediately back at Hansen's place, but I decided to stick this out for now. There's not much more to add about the downtime, though I did discover that there's a whole ass arcade cabinet minigame where you pilot Roach in a pretty damn fleshed out take on the Google Chrome dinosaur game. And there's another one that's like a Metal Slug Contra kind of thing. And they're both like fully thought out games within this game. Nothing to do with the DLC or anything, but these guys really just kept adding shit, huh? Anyways, Reed makes his call and you meet with him at a gas station on the outskirts of town. And this is where you really begin to see the cracks in the armor of Solomon Reed. He didn't call V out to tell him when the surgery team would be ready, he called him out to try to confront his emotions on what he did to somebody who he called a friend. Reed is easily one of the more complex characters in Cyberpunk, and the game doesn't quite hold your hand through his nuances. He's a professional, one that's curt and unattached when a job needs doing. He's reliable, a tool to be used, one who won't stray from his orders even to reach out to those who he claims to care about. But there's an imperfection in that cold and calculating robot of a man. He does care. You might be able to assert early on that he uses the guise of caring for others as another weapon in his arsenal to get results. But by the end of the game, it's clear that there is this emotional side of him that is at odds with his professional side. He questions why Songbird did what she did, why she didn't reach out to him for help. He grapples with the idea that he sealed her away in a dark corner of the NUSA, sentenced to a life as a tool just like him. And instead of truly confronting his demons, he buries them further down, killing off any part of his personality that might care to question why he's done what he's done, and instead opting to take on the persona of a model FIA agent who only follows orders. The reality is that he follows and works for a woman who's openly committed war crimes and sold out one of his former friends, all because the job demanded it. When V points out that Songbird felt the exact same way when she allowed Reed to be handed over to Arasaka, Reed immediately and bluntly states that he does not blame her because it was the order that she was given. That response is the only answer that Reed could possibly give without imploding. Because if he empathized with her plight due to how he feels now, it would mean that simply following orders with no other self-reflection or emotion isn't an acceptable way to live.
His president proved herself a war criminal. His friend flipped him a fucking club-sized bird. His ideals, bottom of a cesspit, choking on shit. He'll hang himself.
After letting him go his way and waiting out another day's worth of time, Reed contacts V once more to let him know that an AV is inbound and ready to take him to a facility where the best medical staff on this hemisphere is ready to operate on him. And this is far and away the best news that V has gotten this entire game in relation to his survival odds. I was honestly completely caught off guard by an actual ending stemming from this DLC and found it welcome that V could experience the best chance at the cleanest opportunity to live on. No raiding Arasaka Tower, no endangering other people's lives, no dealing with the devil. Well, no dealing with a very specific devil. Of course, Johnny has his 2 cents to chip in about this entire affair.
Say you told the FIA to stick their offer where the sun don't shine. Just don't make the call to Reed. We'll find another way.
This is actually a new side to Johnny's psyche that we haven't seen until now. Yes, we've seen the angry Silverhand who only wants vengeance. We've seen the concerned Silverhand who cares about his former friends and V. We've seen the accepting Silverhand who willingly goes with Alt to be absorbed by her. We've seen the disappointed Silverhand who scoffs at what V is willing to become in order to live. And I thought that last one was the flavor of Johnny that we'd wind up with here. I mean, the NUSA is a government that is barely distinguishable from the megacorporations that rule with an iron fist. But what we get here is a scared Silverhand, one who expected to get shelved and dusted off one day, or escape into the net and live on as a set of data. For all of his claims that he wants to help, that he's willing to make the ultimate sacrifice so that V can live on, those words came from somebody who believed that he would make it in some way or another, regardless of what happened to the mercenary. And this is the first time that he's actually had to face death since he was strapped to an Arasaka chair back in 2023. Naturally, Johnny lays into V, reverting back to his old ways and lashing out at the mercenary for doing something that he sees as selfish. On one hand, this could easily be seen as karmic justice, the rocker finally fizzling out via the same set of egocentric ideals that he used to embody. But on the other, it really does have V tossing away a friendship that was built up over the course of most of the game when there were other options. Other, messier options that all led to uncertainty in a way that makes this option feel like winning the lottery comparatively.
Congrats. Can feel proud of what you've become.
The hell you want from me, Johnny?
Acknowledgement, decency, a sprinkling of regret, and an apology.
Want an apology for me choosing to save my own life?
No, V. An apology for fucking ending mine.
And that's the biggest driving emotion in Johnny Silverhand right now. Not wrath because he didn't get to kill Atom Smasher, not lament that he couldn't live on. He's genuinely hurt that somebody he considered to be a dear friend threw him away like garbage after everything that they've been through, mirroring precisely what Songbird tried to do to V at the end of her ride. And Johnny feeling bad for her was a precursor to what happens if you go through with this, and him begrudgingly accepting his fate now as he spins through a wheel of emotions is out of necessity, not an amicable end where he's sure that the two of you have done everything that you could do.
Think that's what I respect most about you, sticking to your guns.
With the cycle of grief concluded, the doctor on board notices V's cortisol levels spiking and treats our king to a hefty dose of futuristic NyQuil to ward off the ghost of Silverhand at last.
Think this is it, kiddo?
Guess so.
Think we can find it in our heart to forgive each other?
Yeah. I can. You?
Think I can too.
I think Johnny calling V kiddo for the first and only time in this game really drives home the dynamic that these two have established over the course of this story. Yes, they were rivals at times, best friends at others, and even two sides of the same thought process every here and there. But what's never really explicitly stated is the mentor role that Johnny winds up embodying. The cool uncle, the older buddy, the parent that guided somebody who wound up in many of the same roles that Silverhand experienced during his own time. That term of endearment could have easily been replaced with, "This is it, man," or something closer to that buddy-buddy terminology, but it wasn't. And it tugs on your heartstrings in a way that I didn't expect from what's essentially the last real line that Johnny has in this game if you go this route. The final sequence of this game lasts about an hour and some change, similar to the Arasaka surgery ending from the base game, but with a more realistically somber twist. The Arasaka ending was gloomy, depressing, and terrible in the best way, but this surgical ending is one that takes very real emotions and ideas that can be applied to anybody's life and stitches everything together in a way that I honestly was not expecting. V awakens in a hospital bed, face to face with none other than Reed. Immediately, it's clear that something has gone awry, and that V was out for longer than a handful of weeks that he was told the procedure would take. The question is, how long was he out for? We don't get that answer immediately, as Saul is surprisingly ginger with easing V into the news about his life. First, he makes sure that he's feeling as okay as he can be. Then he lets him know that removing the relic has made it so that his body will no longer accept any sort of combat implant.
I'm sorry, V. But the life you used to know is gone. You were out for 2 years. It's 2079.
2 years. It's not the decade plus that I expected, but it's still just long enough in a world where your reputation is everything, where everyone thinks that you're dead if you haven't shown your face. The only person that we have in this moment is looming over us with a badge and a tie, somebody who offers us a cushy desk job within the FIA as a relatively normal member of society. You know the people that we pass by on the streets of Night City, who mill from point to point, who sit on the curb waiting for something to happen? You always assume that everybody has some sort of body modification, some kind of futuristic technology infused within their beings that make them different from any other random person that you see in the real world. The reality is that if they were all superpowered machines who could crush iron with their hand, they'd be doing something more in line with what V was doing. He was the exception and now he's nothing. Or he would be if his friends had forgotten about him. The main connections that you made throughout the game are now V's focus as he seeks validation after 2 years of going dark. Pan Am has moved out to the hills, her connection severed from the main grid, impossible to contact. Judy has moved to Pittsburgh, got married, and is living her best life away from the horrors of Night City. She's happy to hear from V, but, well, much like that old friend from a lifetime ago that you hear from suddenly, you don't always want to drop everything to let them crash back into your life. Carrie is currently at the Crystal Palace, having gotten done with one of the many stops on his musical tour around and beyond the globe. He has the best excuse to be too busy to help V out, but our former mercenary still feels betrayed regardless. River has turned to a life of crime, something that he did out of necessity to help his nephew to afford rehab. It was a single mistake that turned into a string of errors, and V's insistence that River had no other choice only causes him to lash out at our guy, not willing to face what his life has become. V only reminds River of the proud, incorruptible police officer that he used to be, and it's difficult to blame the guy for hanging up when faced with so many emotions at once. So here V is, weak, alone, and potentially worst of all, bald. There's one more number in his list of contacts that he can think of to dial, Victor Vector, our first real friend in this game after Jackie. Vic is elated to hear from V, and the relief from V's end is palpable after it seems that everybody else forgot about him. The writers absolutely nailed this entire sequence, and I mean nailed it. Yes, 2 years in real life is probably a short enough window for a lot of people to forgive a friend for ghosting them, especially when the reason attached is so dire. But Night City and the world of Cyberpunk takes every day, every week, every month, and just enhances it. A mercenary who takes a month vacation is forgotten about. People in V's line of work don't just disappear for 2 years. If they do, they've died. And all of these people went through that cycle of grief and moved on. As unfair as it seems to our former mercenary, it's just as unfair to expect people to just jump up and greet him at the door when he finally makes it back home with that promised carton of milk. And so V winds up in the back of a Delamain cab, watching as the buildings and people fly by. The alley that he winds up in is unrecognizable despite it being the same location that he's been a million times. The corporations of Night City move and spread like a cancer, consuming all small shops as they do. And Misty's Esoterica is no exception, now replaced by a Zetatech Corpo Ripperdoc office. Likewise, Vic is in the same location as he's always been, but now donning a Zetatech smock as he greets V. As the scene continues, it's clear that for all of Vic's confidence, he really can't do anything to help V regain his implants in any sort of capacity. The chat that the two of them have is somber and real, as V pokes and prods at Vic for finally giving in and selling out to a corporation.
This chain came looking, knocking, pressured me pretty hard. In a bid to survive, I gave them an indecently high price. They agreed to pay it.
The ending is crushing in a true-to-life way. The people that you relied on and called your friends have moved on. The handful that remain have changed. Night City continues its suffocation, ousting the few who resisted and rebelled or swallowing them whole and making it a part of their mass-produced march. All they have now is the memories of a better time, hating their current lives but reveling in the echoes of their past. The irony of V's life is that some of his best times stemmed from moments when his brain was under active attack, where he was hyper-fixated on not dying. And now that he's been granted a new lease on life, all he can do is lament what he lost. He walks out of the clinic a broken man, some thugs robbing him before tossing his frail body down the steps. Had he been chromed out like he was before, he could have snapped them like twigs, and now here he is, the legendary mercenary folded like a lawn chair at the hands of petty criminals. It's here where Misty shows up on her way to grab some leftovers from where her old shop was. She explains that she up and left when she realized that she was unhappy and unbalanced, and V clings to her like she can solve all of his problems with a single bit of sage wisdom. It's the absolute perfect depiction of being lost in life, of losing everything that you once held dear, of not cherishing the good times while you were having them because you were so worried about some other looming threat, of falling into a pit of depression so deep that it feels impossible to climb back out. And Misty doesn't give V the magic answer that helps him to cheer up. She tells him that he's a nobody now, a regular person. He can't fight his way out of a situation. He can't run towards gunfire. He has to live like everybody else does now, like those random people that you see walking the streets daily, just a face in the crowd. V was never the main character in the world of Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, he was a stellar mercenary, one who was widely recognized, or at least starting to become widely recognized. But he was never meant to change the world. His 2-year absence wasn't felt by society. Night City moved on like it always did, regardless of his input. In a cruel twist of fate, V is now thought about the same way that Johnny Silverhand was 50 years after his death, and seeing all of this unfold has you realizing that these emotions were likely what the old rock star felt as he watched from the bleachers in V's mind. Nobody likes being told that they don't matter, especially when their ego has caused them to chase stardom. But V never really has mattered to Night City for nearly every waking moment of his life. Oftentimes we play video games to be the hero, to change the world, to go from a nobody to a king. This game is the opposite of that. And this ending recontextualizes all of those seemingly impressive feats that V performed throughout his short time as an up-and-coming mercenary, proving that he was never really all that important to the city. Those who remember him have moved on, from friends to fixers, from enemies to corporations. Nobody cares anymore. And all that's left now is to reminisce about a time when youth and capability had V chasing glory as he tries to pick up the pieces and move on towards a future where he's just a guy. The ending credits have the same sort of calls from random people, albeit a lot fewer than the base game, obviously. Rogue states that V is always welcome back to the afterlife, but notes that if he wants his legend to persist as it has been, it might be better to not drag his corpse slowly through the bar and mar his image. It's harsh but true, a Rogue statement like any other. Mitch, the Aldecaldo nomad who you saved during your mission to take down the Corpo AV, calls in an almost pained way. He definitely doesn't want to have to make this call, but he does so for Pan Am, who was wounded so badly by V's disappearance that she can't bring herself to call him back. Pan Am let somebody into her heart for the first time in a very long time, and paid a terrible price for doing so. She went through that mending process only for V to try to contact her like nothing happened. And Mitch here explains that it would be best if he didn't call again, almost acting like a new boyfriend in an ex-lover's life. Reed calls next, not looking at the phone as he does, as if he accidentally called in the middle of a rant. For all of the questioning of his character and for all that he's accomplished since capturing Songbird, he still debates whether what he did was right. Whether the decision that he made to follow what he knows and what he's built his personality around was what was necessary. It's a guilt that will likely haunt him until his dying day, one that he'll have to come to terms with to live happily fulfilled in any real capacity. And finally, Vic calls, having gotten news that his corpo overlords are moving him to a place in San Francisco. He tries to put on that carefree attitude that he always seemed to exude in the past and insists that him and V get drunk and watch some old prize fights from back in the day, trying to delve into that nostalgia-laden prison that so many fall victim to in real life, hoping to relive better times that he didn't know would be better until they were gone. It's so damn depressing, but in the most relatable way. I said it before, but there truly are no happy endings in Night City. And even after the DLC where the happy ending is just in sight, fate robs V like it always has, the city's clutch on his soul inescapable even when cured. It's probably my favorite ending of the bunch, one that confirms that V will physically live on, but has more or less died anyway. It's crazy how often you'll play a game, get a bad or neutral ending, and then look up how to get the coveted good ending. The one where everyone lives on and the world is a better place. That was never in the cards for V, and the more that you chip away at these endings, trying to find a route where he defies his fate and gets back to being that legendary mercenary that he seeks to be, the more that dire spiritual tarot reading from Misty becomes the only outcome. The writers wanted an Oedipus Rex, a Macbeth. and they committed to that to the bitter end. At this point, I have to doubt that siding with Reed from the start will lead to anything truly new, but I've been surprised a few times already, so let's get to it.
Why? Why are you doing this?
I trust Reed when he says he can help you. And honestly...
Nothing. You understand nothing. Two-facedness.
Well, color me surprised. It's very difficult to not continue to relentlessly pay the developers of this game compliments. With the amount of games that I've reviewed on this channel, I'm so used to a story seeming to have 3, 4, 5 options, but really it winds up looping around to having one gameplay path with maybe 2 endings, especially for a DLC. And because of that, I just assumed that we would knock Songbird out, make our escape, and go through the ending that I just went through again. But here we are watching as Alex gets gutted by Hansen, running through the area, fighting Hansen, and then joining Reed as we pursue an out-of-control Songbird. She eventually gets picked up by MaxTac, an elite force of NCPD that specializes specifically in stopping cyber psychos and is well equipped to do so. From here, Reed calls Myers, who states that she wants Songbird alive, a different tune coming from the president when compared to our spaceport foray previously. It's up to the two of us to track down a netrunner who can tap into the NCPD's file systems, figure out where they've placed Songbird, and proceed from there. I assume if you're a smart boy, you can do the tracking yourself, another reason to play this game with a different overall build priority, I suppose. Although I'm pretty sure I can just rework my stats if I wanted to, but you know, whatever, like I'm already this far into it with these. I wind up getting the data from a runner that we encountered earlier on in the game and then heading off to an ambush point to meet with Reed. While going down this path hasn't revealed any new, enlightening personality attributes from Reed, it definitely further enhances the ideas that I've already tossed out there. You get the option to ask him how he's feeling, especially with Alex dead at the hands of Hansen. And he's like, "What? No, we're working, dude, let's focus up." And that's his doctrine. Work comes first, not emotion. We don't question orders, we get shit done. When there's downtime, we can think about what we've done and chip away at our psyches, but for now, we have a job. He's not just a company man, he's the company man. And it's very clear how he got to the position that he's in now. A lot of stories would have the consummate professional suddenly growing a conscience and creating an opening for a curveball in the name of personal growth. But I would honestly be surprised if that happened in this story with the way that the writers have approached everything so far. The planning phase is much better than any other drone shot that we've been a part of with the Nomads. I initially almost decided to just skip it, because the drone sequences are a lot of, alright, so this'll happen, and then this, and then this. You can scan stuff if you want to. But this time we're not scanning, we're given options. Turrets or mines. When you choose one of those, where are they being set up? Are we using smoke grenades or not? Where is V gonna set up? It's actually pretty damn cool. I stuck to my strengths and went with street level, mines, and smokes. I know these planning phases are usually rife with the planner going, "Okay, so these are the most dangerous people that we've ever seen, so be careful and take this shit seriously." But I think the MaxTac Cyber Psycho Squad might actually be the first enemy to truly fit that bill besides, I guess, Arasaka Tower. We get one more chance to annoy the shit out of Reed until he finally spills his real thoughts out, which is the only way that we'd ever actually get anything out of the guy. What he reveals is that he views Songbird's plight as directly his fault. But it's not in an apologetic way. Yes, Reed does feel bad for her. Yes, he's guilty. But he's guilty that he didn't control the situation better than he did. And that's who Solomon Reed is. The control freak who lost that control when things went awry. Songbird trying to escape in the manner that she has isn't something that Reed views as a part of who she is, but as a part of what he didn't do right to keep her trusting him enough to seek his help. It's an excellently written piece of the puzzle here, though I wish that V would have more options to grill people over their character flaws. That said, you're playing a merc, not a psychology major, so I get it. CDPR has always been amazing at writing realistically flawed individuals who stick to their flaws to the very end, and Reed might just be their magnum opus in that regard. The last real thing of note here before kicking this event off is that Reed is the first person to notice V's body language and posture shift when he's conversing with Johnny in his head, which I thought was a fun touch. He of course thinks that Songbird is the one who he's chatting with, but V simply tells him that he wasn't, and that's where the conversation ends, which, on one hand, I guess it would be pretty normal for Reed of all people to keep any suspicions and thoughts of V lying to himself. He wouldn't fly off the handle and accuse the mercenary of conspiring against him, but it would have been nice if V could just tell him that he's chatting with fucking Johnny Silverhand. That's just a funny quip to make if Saul has no idea about that aspect of V as a character. So I take my position, time rolls forward, and Songbird accidentally makes contact with V as she's working to free herself from Max Tack, presumably with the Blackwall's power. She is not fucking happy. Which, I mean, at this stage, I'm kind of enjoying the sheer hypocrisy radiating from this woman, right? At the stage that we betrayed her, she likely had just found out about the idea that the cure was only able to be used on one person, though maybe that did come right after. I don't think there was an exact timeline on that information making itself known to her, but I like to think that this woman who had planned to string V along got her comeuppance and is now lashing out wildly at the guy that she had intended to betray. The assault begins slowly. You got some officer types with Brooklyn accents popping out and going, "Hey yo, what the fuck going on here?" And you just dome them. Then you pop the latch off of this big soda can and get hit with 4 layers of hardcore, massively bionic, two-fisted Yojimbos questioning what the fuck kind of meal is this as they glare down at you with cybernetic eyes laced with menace. Fantastic introduction. They do die fast, but they also dodge your attacks until Reed hits them with a sniper shot. Melee reigns supreme here as I chew through them, but I still really love this fight. That said, it does feel like we should have prepared for this a little bit better. I mean, yeah, Max Tack was well prepped for, I guess, but we forgot about the woman who can control technology with her mind and has now been unleashed. Likewise, she takes off in the AV, Reed takes a hit to the leg, and V has to chase her down as she pilots through the streets and crashes into a building. Now mind you, at this point we've been full-on leaning into treating Songbird like a wounded puppy, and I just don't like that. It doesn't feel natural to me.
Go, save her, V. We don't know her condition. She could be hurt. She could be terrified. You gotta find her, V.
Like, it just takes all of that irritation that I felt at the start of the DLC and compounds it. I don't care about Songbird here like I did when I got her to that rocket. And this entire ordeal feels like we're the men in white suits coming to help her into a padded cell. Maybe that's intentional. What I do like is how unhinged she's become now that she's been pushed to this point. And creeping down this medulla well only ramps that up as we follow the Blackwall bleed that she's leaving behind everywhere, something that we can see due to our link to her. So here's the deal. Songbird intentionally crashed here because she knew that even more crazy forbidden technology was lurking beneath an old Militech facility called Cynosure, the corporation's answer to Arasaka's Soul Killer program. It's vaguely described as a technological nuke, and something like a Blackwall-infused netrunner whose personality is slowly being consumed by AI making contact with it is bad.
You still trust Reed? It's more convenient, yes?
V.
What's up? What is it?
She's here. Chick's establishing a link with the relic, but she's not alone.
Is it the Blackwall? Johnny.
No Reed. No Silverhand. No one.
I knew what these guys were going to do right from the start when they began to build all of this up. Like, every single part of it screams that you're about to be thrust against some kind of monster. I've played Resident Evil and Silent Hill games. I know what I'm about to face when I get a fucking manual map to look at. But I still can't believe they decided to make a full-on horror game out of nowhere. And at the same time, these are the guys who built all of those fully functioning arcade games into their video game. So if it was going to be anyone, it'd be them to throw this curveball. God, I love this fucking game. So yeah, you're now being hunted by the Blackwall AI who has taken over Songbird's body and is piloting a nigh-on invincible robot. If it catches you, you just die. On one hand, oh no, why can't we fight back? I'm so powerful. But on the other hand, I mean, I knew what was happening before it happened, so I'm down. It's not particularly difficult, but it definitely embodies the very intense nature of alien isolation, even down to the way that the robot stalks you. It's fun, it's tense, it's everything that I would generally want in a mix-up like this. I could easily see somebody hating this if they don't like horror games. It's kind of a crazy move in that regard. Like, something like The Witcher naturally has those elements, so messing with wraiths and all that is expected. But this is just completely out of left field. And it does something even better as it continues to expand on Songbird's backstory in a much more natural way. Ironic that the natural way to show off her background is to have these visions that are directly connected to Songbird tampering with the relic and connecting your mind with her memories, and yet I had an issue with her conversationally taking us through her experiences because that happened 10 minutes into knowing her. At this stage, Songbird is flipping aggressively between her own personality and that of the Blackwall AI controlling her body, and pushing in further presents V with one more round of disabling systems while this invincible pile of junk pursues us.
Hi.
I've said this for years and years, but the absolute key to true horror in a video game is making the player powerless. You can throw Master Chief into a room of flood, or Isaac onto a ship full of necromorphs, or Leon against the entirety of Spain's chainsaw men, which seems to be a big issue over there. But at the end of the day, you're still Master Chief, still Isaac, still Leon, and you still have the means to fight back. They're tense situations, sure, but you can bring all of these enemies down. The developers of this section understand horror in such a profound way that I would love to see them whip up an entire game centered around the medium. There aren't cheap jump scares, you're always given a signal when you're being hunted, not only through the eerie music but through the visual glitches. Every movement traps you between the idea of crawling slowly to the next part or making a mad dash. Every time that you interface with a required panel, the telltale thumping of the robot fills you with dread. This entire segment is fantastic, a rare instance of a developer stepping outside of their game's established norms and nailing what they set out to accomplish. Oftentimes when a dev suddenly throws in what they feel is a required underwater or stealth segment or insists on paying homage to another genre, the attempt comes from a good place but falls flat. It's truly refreshing to see these guys pull off a shift this successfully. Though one could argue that the entirety of Cyberpunk had CDPR working outside of their comfort zones given their past works. At this stage, we're near the end of our time in the Cynosure facility here, and I think it's worth noting just how many little notes and fragments of data lurk around the area, spelling out the background of just what this facility was meant to be. Like I said before, Cynosure was meant to counter Arasaka's progress on the Soulkiller program. Whereas Arasaka trapped netrunners who were foolish enough to attack the megacorporation, downloading their souls into an engram and creating a virtual slave for them to use, Militech decided to go straight to the source and try to capture rogue AI in an attempt to study them and harness their power. This was before the invention of the Blackwall, so rogue AI were kinda just roaming free at this stage, not yet reaching a critical mass that would cause humanity to build something to contain them. Cynosure was the facility where this research was taking place, a dangerous job that had netrunners attempting to interface with the rogue AI. The systems in place kept the runners in one piece when all was functioning correctly, though sometimes workplace incidents would occur, such as the neural network stabilizers being offline when somebody was diving. This particular incident caused the Netrunner to be fried instantly when a rogue AI overloaded their brain with too much data for them to even remotely comprehend. Even when the safety measures were in place, it became apparent fast that interacting with these entities day after day caused Netrunners to begin exuding depressive thoughts and memory loss. Of course, the higher-ups at Militech were in an arms race and did not give a shit about the little guy as always, insisting that Cynosure continue on until it produced results. And the more that Militech pushed, the more that the rogue AI resisted, infiltrating security systems and beginning to slowly take over the facility. Of course, a lot of this information is gleaned from terminals around the facility that I tried to extract while being chased by a homicidal robot. And even then, much of it is speculation, ranging from rogue AI taking systems over to outside Netrunners attempting to expose Militech's research to the world. So the truth isn't quite spelled out the way that I'm framing it, I'm just choosing the more fun option of the bunch. And as such, I'm very sure that I'm missing some pieces of the puzzle with all of this. The point is that this all lends that much more atmosphere and mystique to this dark crawl through this pit that never should have been unsealed or even invented to begin with. It's fantastically done and better than I ever could have hoped for. I mean, you have to understand that I was pretty sure that we'd wind up back at the spaceport, tracking down Songbird who's trying to rocket off to the moon. But this is much more of a brand new route than I ever would have expected. When we finally get back to the core control room, V is jumped for the final time, with Songbird barely able to wrestle control away from the AI and plunging V's consciousness into her own, a form of Blackwall magic causing what feels like minutes of exposition to unfold in seconds. Oftentimes when this kind of sudden voodoo takes place, especially in sci-fi, you want the nitty-gritty details that define what's happening here verbatim. And I probably would have gotten those details if I had maxed out my intelligence, but yeah, no. So it's techno-magic to me, and I'm okay with that, honestly. What we witness is a string of memories that define Songbird in a way that we just haven't gotten from her character until now. It's again one thing for a character to tell you how they were raised in Brooklyn and blah blah blah, but it's another thing to see it, to observe how she lived and who she was, the friends that she had, her triumphs and her failures as a netrunner. It humanizes her and defines her in a way that's more than just, this is an important character. And for as much as I gave the writers grief for pushing her importance the way that they did, I have to admit that they more than made up for that misstep. What we see is a young woman who wanted to prove herself as a netrunner, a confident and bold woman who would occasionally complain about the talents of those in her field who were around her but still cared immensely about them as friends. When she got a little too overzealous with her diving into corporate secrets, Reed came to blackmail her away, forcing her to choose between a Netwatch prison cell or an FIA box. And that was when her life as she knew it came to an end. And it was her fault, right? Much like Reed touts the idea that a job is a job, Songbird's lawbreaking came with its own sets of risks and punishments. But you can't blame her for blaming everyone else around her. The average person isn't going to be able to reflect in that way. And even if they do, more often than not, they're still going to try to break free when they can.
I made so many mistakes. Did terrible things. But here, back then, they never mattered. I know what I've done. Know the price I've paid. What you don't know is how sorry I am.
Songbird is the perfect example of a tragic character, one who can't escape her fate the same way that V can't. And after seeing how all of this plays out, regardless of whether I liked her at first or not, whether I felt she was too forced or not, I can't help but applaud just how well she's written. Seeing her in her final moments in this ending path redefines how I feel about her, because now I don't really feel like she actually escapes in that rocket to the moon. I don't think she lives on in a new life. I think she'll always be trapped, her fate sealed from the very beginning. Always running, always yearning for freedom. That's why when she begs V to end it all, my first instinct was to oblige.
To exist like this, I can't. Let me die. Help me die, please. Thank you. And I'm sorry.
for everything.
As always, every detail in this ending path is just as close to perfect as you can ask for from a video game. Reed shows up and quietly helps V to bring Songbird's body away. Of course, the NUSA wants it for whatever sinister data extraction that they intend to put it through. The ride over is somber, the atmosphere laced with absolute malice from Reed, who's livid that V put Song out of her misery.
Want to talk about it?
Want to know what's eating at me? That I didn't get to her first. Ahead of you.
Reed.
It should have been me down there with Somi. Not you. I should have looked her in the eye. Heard her say she wanted out of life. I could have changed her mind.
Solomon Reed is a narcissist, but not in a way that you typically see out of a media portrayal of a narcissist. At a surface level, he talks the talk, he claims that he can get shit done and that if he's in charge, results will follow. He's confident, arrogant, and so pumped full of ego that he would sooner blame V for failing rather than confront his own failures.
You failed as an FIA-associated operative. You failed me, Alex, Myers, hell, maybe even yourself.
But like I said, that's surface level. What rages beneath is a man who questions his beliefs constantly, who truly believes that he was friends with Alex and Songbird. When you meet with him later for the final time, he shares a memory with V of a time when the three of them went to Songbird's grave. The NUSA had arranged for her to be officially dead on paper years and years ago, and the group visited it to have some drinks, lay some flowers, the kind of goofy idea that might stem from blowing off steam after a big operation. Saul reflects on that time fondly. In his mind, they were great friends. Songbird didn't shed a single memory about a good time that revolved around Reed when we were directly connected to her brain. She didn't relive any fun moments with her crew. Every memory and thought that she had involving Reed showcased a man who she felt caged her in a way that she was never able to escape from. So yes, Reed did think of Songbird as a close friend, but she didn't reciprocate that feeling in the slightest. You had a misguided FIA agent who put his work above all else and was confused when his friends wanted nothing to do with him beyond work, who was confused why they didn't trust him. And when he's given the time to reflect, to think about his actions and emotions, the conclusion that Reed comes to is that V was right to allow Songbird to die.
You were right. I wanted to tell you in person. You're right, V. V, I almost lost everything because of you.
Fuck, Reed.
Don't talk. Just listen. I lost partners, friends, the trust of my superiors. Everything I believed in, built my life on, gone in seconds. All because I believed you'd help me save Somi.
Reed, I saved Somi. You know that. You were angry for some other reason. Maybe still are. Things slipped from your grip. You didn't get to make the final call. But know what? From where I'm sitting, that was for the best.
That's why I said I think you were right. I got nothing to lose now. I might be able to gain something for once, though. All because of you, or thanks to you. Not sure which is more fitting.
Do you understand the nuance that it takes to write a character who is simultaneously learning to accept that they could be wrong but are still so stuck in their ways to such a strong degree that they continue to blame others for their situation? That tug of war between fuck you, you caused this, and I'm sorry, you were right? This game is so goddamn good. How else can I explain it?
They were shit grounds hot. They were her choices, Reed.
Every moment is crafted around being real to an astonishing degree, and I don't think there will ever be another game like this.
Show me. For what it's worth. I hope you're at peace.
There are a few more loose ends with this path to discuss, namely Myers and Johnny. Now Myers is... Alright, so at the start of this video, I made fun of her for being this woman who was supposed to be all business and yet was sitting here freaking out and trusting a random mercenary with cutting her open. And yeah, I still think some of that criticism still stands, but I do also think that I was a tad harsh. as the true President Myers really comes out in this ending where V is viewed as a colossal failure.
Seems I have only myself to blame. I should have considered your abilities first. My apologies.
Myers is a politician who absolutely excels at manipulation to the highest degree. She knows when to play up others' emotions, knows when to dial it back, knows when to take control. The woman that we face down at the end of this is one who has mastered the art of contempt, who can stare soullessly into V's face and treat him like the pawn that he is now that he's fucked up everything in her eyes. Songbird was not a friend to her. She was a tool, one who the president claimed to care about if only to get V to fight harder for her. The cold visage that she now embodies is the polar opposite of that warmth that she showed V earlier, creating one of the most hateable characters I think I've ever had the displeasure of interacting with in a game. Sniveling for a reward from her causes her to thrust $5,000 your way, the price of going through hell and back for somebody that she tried to continue to shackle and use to their dying breath. So let's move on to Johnny, who ties this story up elegantly.
Some stories don't get a happy ending for the credits roll, leaving questions you're never gonna find the answers to.
While Johnny does quiz V on how he feels about everything that has happened, he also weighs in with his own self-reflection. And this particular conversation feels like the writer's learning over time. Yes, we've had our big Johnny moments where he's freaking out about megacorporations or beginning to reflect on his personal mistakes. But oftentimes those conversations were one-sided and served an overall goal of expressing a single idea to the player. The ending of Phantom Liberty really does bring out the best in Johnny Silverhand dialogue, a natural flow with both him and V contributing aspects to the overall dialogue that are surprisingly mature and well thought out. It's a conversation for more than just the express purpose of conveying a topic, a much more natural approach where the two hash out their inner feelings on a situation that's beyond fucked up.
Yeah, just sit there and criticize me when it wasn't you making the tough calls. Fucking typical.
Not making your life any easier, I know.
The conclusion puts as neat of a bow on this mess that we've unpacked as possible, starting with the vague notion that there was no true happy ending that could have befallen Songbird, and concluding with Johnny considering the idea that him and Reed are one and the same. What he proposes is that he was once as misguided and bullheaded as Reed, but that Reed had enough gumption to actually follow through and do what he set out to do, right or wrong. Johnny sees that reflection and understands what caused him to lash out the way that he did throughout his life. He believed his ideals were his heart and soul, and that if anybody infringed on said ideals, he would gut them on the spot. Reed is the same way with his work, with how much he insists on controlling the outcome. But he took it a step further and actually committed to the end. Johnny would always bolt when the going got tough, whether mentally through drug use or physically when he fled from the army life. It's actually something that I pointed out in my first video when experiencing Johnny's former lifestyle firsthand, in which I called him a poser who shouted his message from the tops of buildings but then didn't actually do anything to act on said message until Alta was captured.
You know what? Glad we talked, Johnny. You've changed.
For better or worse?
Guess we'll find out.
I gotta say, it's pretty draining to mentally run through another ending again, but I mean, there's one left, right? Well, actually there's two, because you can just walk away from the big Cynosure pit that Songbird crashed into and end the DLC that way, which is funny because, I mean, you're just prematurely leaving this woman to her fate after coming this far, just putting your hands up and going, fuck all that.
Where are you off to? Hey, what's going on? What the fuck are you doing? You seriously gonna abandon me now, V? You're dead now, friend.
Now, fortunately for my mental fortitude, the last ending is pretty similar overall, but with tonal shifts, which is completely fine. These guys have definitely done enough. It would have been neat to have another curveball thrown into the mix, but how much more can we really ask for? Delivering Songbird alive has Myers putting on her happy mask and showing the warmth that she practiced on V before when the two were in direct contact. She's such a good character, honestly, because you know she's doing that politician song and dance that she's rehearsed every day of her life. She says the right words, expresses the right sentiments, and pretends that she's happy that Songbird is safe.
When Somi's better, you'll send word.
Not to worry. She'll recover.
Okay, but you'll let me know, right? Let me talk to her.
I'm afraid that will be impossible. National security demands all that has transpired here will be classified top secret.
Reed continues to question his choices as he has, but with a different inflection. His surface-level thoughts are definitely confident in the idea that saving her life is the right choice. He's a surprising optimist in that regard, someone who believes that life can always get better, but that you obviously have to be alive for that to happen. On the other hand, those feelings that he refuses to face come boiling to the surface, the idea that he's condemning Song to a life of servitude as he always has been. In another example of the scorpion and the frog, the nature of Reed has always been to inflict pain on Songbird, even if he isn't intending to. Another instance of how Reed felt about Song is displayed when V is presented with a medal from the NUSA. Saul explains that she received a medal like that too after her first FIA op, and Songbird decided to pin it on a homeless person's jacket the next day. She never showed that interaction through her memories because it wasn't something that she reflected on. To her, it wasn't a symbol of pride so much as it was a symbol of her imprisonment. Giving it away was an afterthought. To Reed, giving it away was shocking, something that stuck with him and redefined who she was in his mind. The nuances shown are never spelled outright, something that I really respect about this game's storytelling. Reed never comes to the conclusion that he trapped Songbird in hell. He views her as a genuine friend of his. And even when V tries to point it out, he pushes that idea away, claims that it's all part of the job and that V wouldn't know anything about their relationship. The job is what took Songbird from her home, not him. The truth is that Songbird never even felt remotely like Reed was a friend, and Reed never understands that. He would have to be somebody else to do so. The closest that he gets is when he reflects on his job. At the final meeting this time, Reed tells V that he's being shipped back to a desk job, which is his exact fate when Songbird dies also, just with a different tone. When V fails to bring her back alive, the desk job is a punishment and is talked about as such. When V succeeds, the desk job is a reward, one which V points out as something that Reed hates.
Man, you hate this gig, but your head's so far up Washington's ass that you don't see it.
What else is wrong with me? Stockholm Syndrome?
Nah, don't need to be any sort of specialist to see you're in deep, deep denial. Rosalind used you 7 years ago. Used you again now. Gonna sit in your hands till she plucks you out of the freezer again?
That's the job.
Reed has twisted Songbird's disdain for this lifestyle into something that he relates to. He's loyal, unwavering, and will always complete the job, even if he doesn't like it. He's incapable of viewing Songbird as somebody who dislikes him, and instead views her as somebody in the same boat as him, with the same set of standards. There are shades of self-reflection when he remarks on various moments throughout their time together, when she said something that stuck with him, the times when he started to realize that he took her away from everything. But like I said before, for him to follow through on those thoughts and grow from them would cause him to fundamentally be a different person. He was just following orders. It isn't his fault that those orders had him taking her away. And that has been a double-edged sword for V throughout these endings. Even if V walks Songbird through a spaceport and kills off countless FIA soldiers, if you decide to give her up at the end, Reed does not hold a grudge. He doesn't have that malice in him. To him, V made the right choice at the end and has fulfilled his end of the contract, even if he made mistakes along the way. So he gets to go off and have his surgery, and Reed will be there for him as a comrade when he wakes up. That's just how he thinks. You're either for the cause or against it, and proving it one way or the other will determine how Reed treats V. After all is said and done, you can go off to get surgery again and run through that ending if you like, but I obviously don't need to go do all that again. So I decided to head to the rooftop and tell Johnny that I'm not going to go through with it, leading to a very touched Silverhand who's truly grateful that V went this route.
Thanks, V. Just thanks.
Phantom Liberty is absolutely fantastic, and the fucked up part is that I didn't even do a lot of the side gigs that I'm sure would have been great also. It has a rocky start, and I do stand by that. But I also stand by the fact that it is hard to take a story where your character is actively dying and try to coerce him into getting involved with something as deep as this scenario winds up being. I still think that there could have been some editing and reframing of the connections made from the start. I also think that Dogtown as a setting is more interesting from a background lore perspective than it actually winds up being, because it is rather small, and most of it is kind of this rundown garbage pit. It's certainly no Tucson in that regard. But those are such minor criticisms when compared to the storytelling gold that we get from this DLC. CDPR has always been great at telling stories in a way that causes me to rethink what I feel constitutes a well-crafted tale, but Phantom Liberty might just be their crowning jewel in that regard. I feel like I'll regret saying this somehow, but I'm really looking forward to their next installment after being treated to something this incredible. Thanks for watching. It's been a busy-ass month and I wanted to get this out sooner, but here it is now. I'm not sure what I'll hit next, but I'm looking through a few requested options. Maybe I'll do a Patreon poll or something. Until then though, I have a merch shop with all sorts of designs that have been drawn up by my wife, including the Cyberpunk one. I have a Twitch where I stream nearly every Tuesday and Friday. I have a Twitter where I tweet out new videos. And I have a Patreon. And that's it. Have a good one.